candy coated gloss, airbags lower, scrape the belly. Beat in the trunk, turning buildings into confetti. Country grammar like Nelly, we speak with a draw, but slow or something like in our slabs, we creepin' with crowd. Hit a button, you know the roof and screens fall. Jamming screwed up Tila, though we ain't too tired to ball. Root beer candy coated, Caprice flipping like I'm the law. See that shirt on that bop, got enough knock to pop it off. Old head cats telling me, Charlie, you need to knock it off. I just did look again, see I'm about to pop the bra. I'm from the dirty third coast where we keepin' it raw. Yo, slabs up against ours, you think that you're beating us now? Repip your rocker slabs down in the south, be nasty, y'all. Think that it's something, just wait till we pull out them classic calls. Candy paint drip like it was fresh out of molasses jars. Futuristic, got customization is way past the stars.
I got my mom on form, but I'm swinging bumper grills. Got my mom on form, but I'm swinging bumper grills. I'm swinging bumper grills. I'm swinging bumper grills. I'm swinging bumper grills. Bumper grills. I got my mom on form, but I'm swinging bumper grills. Got my mom on form, but I'm swinging bumper grills. I'm swinging bumper grills. I'm swinging bumper grills. I'm swinging bumper grills. Bumper grills.
Ain't no need to asking, boy, yes, I'm a winner, bourbon on 24 with VVS in a spinner, leather seats and my name and diamonds rest in the center. The only time this whip kick a rest is in the winter. Never a beginner, I'm a iced out champ. Leave the bracelet on my wrist and catch a iced out crab. I'm a dog and my whoop bargain nothing but free on, cause it's powered by an iced out amp. Hold up, Rappy Rick. I'ma slow it down and bring it back for my boy Brandon Chisholm in Tyler, Texas. Remember the first CD I ever got on? Ain't no hoes boy, baby. Boy, yes, I'm a winner, bourbon on 24s with VVS in the spinner, leather seats, and my name and diamonds rest in the center. And the only time this whip get caressed is in the winter. Never a beginner, I'm a iced out champ. Lift the bracelet on my wrist and get your iced out cramp. I'm a dog and my woofers barking nothing but free on, cause it's powered by an iced out amp. Platinum princess cuts or invisible sex, going up against us is like you're making it visible. Bet you can't see us. Envious niggas wanting to be us. Untamed already off of the chain, it can't free us from the side. Platinum metal VVS diamonds in my swinging around in my slab, showing boys what we buy. Think you got anybody better? We'll put up your cheddar, then tell them Charlie boy said get up, go get them and bring them by. Dead's in the Lone Star State, hurting Calvin, motherfucker, everything is still great. Country boy not from the city, but me be making my way, because me grind and me hustle, me making my pay. From no ice to ice up, broadcast to priced up, me slanging CDs in the hood like me or selling white stuff. Multi-million-dollar enterprise, keeping the white cup in the palm of me force, and upon the draw that light up. Clean from head to toe, shine from my ear to my grill. Got pneumonia, cause my day, keeping my chest on chill. Says the comfort come down and see this how we live. Diamonds in our mouth, know what I'm talking about, that's right is. Man, Rapid Rick, they keep having to call out the mixtape mechanic, man. No. That's why they call me versatile child. I try to give you a little bit of everything.
Yo, what's going on? You know, I had to put it down, represent for the Lone Star, H-Town. Shout out to Charlie Boy. Back to my roots, man. You know how we doing, man. You know how we rocking, man. We speak with a draw. Let's get it, man. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Hope you guys are having a good one, man. I'm here to give you guys a presentation. A lot of you brothers I was on Clubhouse and sister was like, oh, you guys are not putting on for E1B1A. I'm like, are you dumb? That's all I've been doing on my channel. Well, we've been expanding and talking about E1B1B, which is our brother Clay, which again, I forgot to put this in the presentation. Let me mention it since I'm here and on the topic. I have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as EP2, and then their original descendants will have EP2, and then a later divulge into E1B1A, E1B1B through rapid radiation. So people have to understand that I look at E1B1B and E1B1A as both potential Israelites. I don't just look at one or the other. So I have a unique and particular view on that, man. But shout out to everybody, man. Shabbat Shalom to my brothers, Yosef and Inri Yahu. I hope I'm saying your name, Inri Yahu. Hi, Danny. Shabbat Shalom. So today we're going to get into it. We're really going to teach a couple concepts that I have touched on in the past in this video, on this channel. So a lot of people with the criticism about not representing for E1B1A, that's unfounded. You must be new to the channel. But after this, I think either Sunday or Monday, Ivri of Israel is going to return with the haplogroup J breakdown. So, this right here will hold you guys over until we can get the brother back on the platform and he's ready to present his information. With that stated, let's get right into the meat and potatoes. You know how we rocking, man. 7 gang, source gang over everything. It's not a debate, it's a stick up. 7 candlesticks up. So let's share the screen and go right to the PowerPoint. Talk about E1B1A dispersals, migratory patterns. Where do they come from? What do the scientists say? What does the oral testimony say? What does the legend say? What does the folklore say? What does the writing say? Can we articulate this with empirical data? The answer is emphatically yes. So let's get the PowerPoint up and running. See if I can get my computer to realize that it's open and then we can get started. So if anybody has any questions about this, I will do the Ivri format. I will have Q&A at the end of this. You said it's Niri Yahoo. Okay, Niri Yahoo. Excuse me, brother or sister. I don't know. I don't know if you're male or female. I'm sorry about that. But Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the channel. I think I've seen you here before. I think you've been here every video, actually. All right. Shout out to Tanks on the Ground, Yashar. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, man, we bringing forth them sources. Everybody else about that. They naysayers. They watch us and then they want to try to create an argument. That's ad hoc, post hoc. You ain't did no research on this. You didn't buy the books. You didn't take the time out to disseminate the information. You just saw what I said. Didn't like it. You were upset, and you hurried up and made a quick rebuttal in your mind. Anybody can do that. So let's go to view, and I want to go to reading view. Let's get started. The E1B1A dispersals, migratory routes, and oral traditions. I'm going to be touching on when did E1B1A get to Sub-Saharan Africa. That's going to be a large part of this discussion we're going to have. And again, at the end, I will open up the floor, allow questions. Learning from our brother Ivri. I think that's good for dialogue and growth and building with the channel and the members of the channel. So I got 59 slides, and I started working on this after work yesterday, and I was like, I'm going to do this live tonight. Yeah, that didn't happen. I crashed. So I fell asleep because I was at work practically all day yesterday. But I did start on it, and when I woke up, being the workhorse that I am, I went right back to work and finished the PowerPoint. So again, e1b1a dispersals, migratory routes, and oral traditions. All right, first slide. They crossed the Sahara centuries ago, and this is going to be the central theme of this PowerPoint. And the e1b1a carriers, gene bearers, bringing that DNA down south of the Sahara, where it was not there before. Let's make that clear. We are not indigenous to Sub-Saharan Africa. There's no evidence for that. There's no proof for that. There's no skeletal remains. The oldest skeletal remains we find in Sub-Saharan Africa are haplogroup A and B. Those will be your Hamites according to our model. A and B is Ham. DE is Shem, and CF lineages are Japhet. And I forgot to put this in the presentation. You got to forgive me. Nathaniel Jeanson talks about the 3 ancient nodes that all humans come from, and he ties those 3 ancient nodes to Noah's 3 sons and their wives. So what we do is we divvy up those 3 nodes to later divulge into the 3 major haplogroupings, A, B, D, E, C, F. CF is the early Proto-Europeans. DE will be your early inhabitants of the Middle East, as we point out with the Natufians, and then the D markers being the earliest people in India, and then spreading out East Asia, and then making its way into Japan. We postulate that those are the original Semites or Shemites. So when people say you're anti-Semitic, no, I push nothing but positivity towards actual Semites. We have to actually identify who are the Semites, who are the descendants of Shem. We say those with DE markers would be that. Then we have AB. AB being the Paleo-Africans, the autochthonous original Africans like the Khoi, the San, the Forest people, the early Cushitic people, the early Nilotes, stuff of that nature. You had the early Cushites. The early Kush kingdom would have composed of people with haplogroup A, AM13 markers in particular, according to Muntazer's work. And he actually took a lot of the skeletal remains from Nubia during that time, or right before that time, the pre-Kerma population, tested the DNA, high frequency of AM13. So we know who the Hamites are. They fall into that cluster A and B. So prior to getting to Sub-Saharan Africa, there were A and B markers there. We have the DNA evidence to prove that as well. If you look up the article written about Shamluka or Shamlaka, however you say it, early Cameroon, the skeletal remains from 8,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago comport with each other. A and B haplogroups, A00, and I think BM60 was found there. So this is based on empirical studies, and this is how we built our model. So again, the slide says they crossed the Sahara centuries ago. I just want to give you guys that buffer before we started. According to Toa Kirafa, before the arrival of Christian missionaries, the Sefwi people had specific traditions deriving from Judaism. They strictly adhered to rest on Saturday, followed dietary restrictions that forbade them to eat pork, circumcise boys, and required women to go into isolation during their menstrual period, and so on. The founders of the community suggested that their ancestors originated from Jews in North Africa who had crossed the Sahara Desert centuries ago, perhaps from Timbuktu, ending up in the Ivory Coast. And this also is comparable to what the Igbo brother said in his autobiography, Equiano, about how his people had customs and traditions that were very similar to Judaic practices. You know, circumcision, what he's talking about here, the menstrual separation, isolation of the women. And he was like, it's comparable. And this was in the 18th century when he wrote this. So he goes a step further here, Mr. Toa. I'm just going to call him Toa. He's got a hard name to pronounce. And says that the founders of the community, of this community, the Sefwi people, say their ancestors originated from Jews in North Africa who had crossed the Sahara deserts, the desert centuries ago. And we're going to show how scientific data and thinking has actually overlapped with this, that actually agrees with this. So The Bantu expansion. This is from isogg.org. Y-DNA haplogroup E and its subclades 2010. Y-DNA haplogroup E would appear to have a resident in Northeast Africa based on concentration and variety of E subclades in that area today. But the fact that haplogroup E is closely linked with haplogroup D, which is not found in Africa, leaves open the possibility that E first arose in the Near or Middle East and was subsequently carried into Africa by a back migration. And that's the part a lot of people don't teach you. They don't tell you that. This is the part that often gets left out, or our relationship to DE and D. We see that D migrated all the way to Japan. This is not disputed. DM-174 is the Annamese Islanders, Tibet, the Chiang of China. They were in East Asia, and then eventually they made their way to Japan. So we're related to these people. And then when we get to E, we want to stick them in Africa. But no, the possible origin of these people could be the Middle East. And a lot of people do not want to accept that, which also goes and comports with our model that we are the Semites. We come from Shem. We do not come from Ham. We come from Shem. It says it has two important sublineages, e1b1a and e1b1b. E1b1a is an African lineage that probably expanded from northern Africa to sub-Saharan and equatorial Africa with the Bantu agricultural expansion. So right off the gate, we're showing that oral testimony comports with the scientific theory that they posit about the migratory routes of E1b1a. We can already see that. And we're going to touch on the agricultural expansion later. E1b1a is the most common lineage among African Americans. E1b1b1 probably evolved either in Northeast Africa or the Near East and then expanded to the west, both north and south of the Mediterranean Sea. So our brother Clade has the same similar migratory route. Why? Because we started off together with brother Clades. We started off together. We spread out and dispersed into Africa from the same point, which we're going to get into earlier. We just went into, later we're going to get into, and we just revealed the Sefwi people saying similar, having and expressing similar notions of expanding into sub-Saharan Africa, not originally being from there. And we can see isogg.org at one point had the same outlook for E1b1a. E3a, which is E1b1a, another classification for E3a. The nomenclature changes, so you have different names for the same thing. Okay, so it's African lineage that most likely dispersed south from northern Africa within the last 3,000 years. So they're not invoking 10,000 years, 20,000 years during the Pleistocene. They're invoking something that happened much more recently, what we would call the Iron Age. In the Middle East would be considered the Iron Age is when this happened, which would explain what we're going to break down later, why the Bantu and the early Nok people of Nigeria had access to iron metallurgy. How did they have that skill, that knowledge of pyrotechnology? Because they were creating terracotta. You need to have pyrotechnology and understand how furnaces work in order to do these things. It's a very difficult trade. It's not something you stumble upon. You can't just dig iron out the ground, iron ores out the ground, and expect them to become iron. That's not how it works. It's a very difficult and complicated task. They didn't go through a bronze. They didn't go through a copper age, but they went straight to iron. My argument is that these people carried this knowledge with them once they left the Middle East, as we just read, and then migrated from the north down to sub-Saharan Africa. And that's what we're going to explore. The sources on the left side of the screen: Abraham's Children by John Enteen, page number 266 to 267. Now we're going to deal with E3b. Now this is not focus. This is not the focal point. Is not E3b, but this is our brother Clade, E1b1b, believed to have evolved in the Middle East before spreading into Mediterranean during the Pleistocene Neolithic expansion, found in many Arab populations and in areas around the Mediterranean, in East and North Africa, particularly among the Berbers, and and southeastern Europe. Same book, same page. Abraham's Children, John and Teen, page number 266, 267. So if our brother Clay is related to the Middle East, it's easy to posit and postulate that we belong to the Middle East as well, which would explain what we're going to bring out later, why we find certain e1b1a specimens outside of Africa. Let's keep going. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. A lot of people don't realize that it has been posited that E3A started with only 40 men. E1b1a, let me say it again, started with a population of 40 men, according to the estimation. And these 40 men later blossom into the huge population of E1b1a we see in Sub-Saharan Africa today. The source is 1 to 3 men fathered most West Europeans. That's another thing people don't know. 1 to 3 men fathered 60% of Europeans. That's why you guys have to understand population growth and population genetics before you even, dive into a lot of these topics. It doesn't take that many men to become huge populations, especially when you're dealing with polygamy. David Reich talks about polygamy in his book, which would have boosted our numbers. It says the haplogroups investigated in the study are variations of the Y chromosome only present in men. Using advanced sequencing tools, it was therefore possible to produce a model of population expansion by fatherhood, while the predominant African haplotype E1b1a shows an expansion started from approximately 40 men over about 12,000 years. So he supposed that it takes 12,000 years. We're going to get into the paper, and they actually give a range, which you can actually see here in the graph, 2 to 24,000 years. And he chose, I guess, the median. 2 to 24,000 years, this expansion ballooned, as we say, or blossom. It says the European haplotype R1b shows rapid expansion over a few generations, started from just 1 to 3 men. And that also shows what the European study, and I'm glad he did a comparative analysis between both. It doesn't take that much time to radiate and spread and grow as a population, because the Europeans only did it in a few generations. We know with the Yamnaya culture coming into Europe and displacing the original autochthonous Europeans with the G and the I markers. We did the same thing when we went into Africa and displaced the autochthonous A and B markers. Okay, early Nilotes, Bush people, Khoi and the Sun, Khoi Sun, things of that nature, right? The pre-Kerma population. It says Biomed Central Online Magazine. Biome spoke to Chris Tyler Smith to get his take on what the article is telling us. When asked about why the population of Europe may have expanded so rapidly, he suggested that in Europe, a starting number of farmers may have been smaller, so there were fewer Y lineages. And the farming package, perhaps including several different crops and domesticated animals, may have been well suited to the environment, so the farmers could increase rapidly in number. Why is this important? Because the Bantu expansion is the same thing. You have farmers coming in, bringing in agriculture, agrarian society, and that is what helps you grow. And that's what supports population boom, because you can create a surplus of food and you can support a larger society. So this is a beautiful paper written, right, that shows you population growth and it happening in a short amount of time. Because even with E1b1a, it's a range that they give it 2 to 24,000 years. And I'm going to roll with the 2.53 thousand years because that comports with the Bantu expansion. Watch this. 2.5 thousand years ago. And this is from the paper that the last paper was actually citing from. So if you look up the modeling, the contrast in Neolithic male lineage expansions in Europe and Africa by Michael J. Sikora and others on PMC, you can find this information. The later and more gradual E1b1a expansions in Africa is as expected from the spread of cattle herders from the north between 2.5 and 8,000 years ago. So they have it the same way. E1b1a coming from the north and going down into sub-Saharan Africa. This is a scientific paper. There's no paper suggesting with material or empirical evidence that we were there 30,000 years ago. That's nothing out there saying that, but you have people on the internet reverberating that nonsense. It's not based on empirical science, observable data. It's based on, a fairy tale pretty much. So here's the range, 2.5 to 8,000 years ago. Of course, I'm going to lean more towards 2.5 to around 3,000 years ago, because that's what we see with the pottery assemblages. We can see when the first settlements were created and erected in Africa, and it falls within that timeline. Followed by the Bantu expansion to the southern tip of the continent, beginning approximately 2.5 thousand years ago and ending within the last few hundred years, incorporating a package of Bantu languages, cattle, and ironworking, which is going to be the themes that we're going to touch on. They brought forth cattle. There was no cattle in Sub-Saharan Africa prior to 4,000 years ago. That's just a known fact in academia. There was no ironworking there. Okay? So we're seeing these things come from the north and then come to the south. Poignant points. We're gonna get back to that, right? Let's keep going. The range of expansion. In Europe, the expansion was very rapid, taking only approximately 325, 50 to 600 years, and ending approximately 12,000 years ago, or 6 to 14,000 years ago. While in Africa, it was considerably less rapid, taking approximately 2 to 24,000 years, and ending more recently, approximately 2 or 0 to 12,000 years ago is when they're saying the Bantu or the expansion of e1b1a. But again, it gives you a range, 2 to 24,000. I take 2 to 3,000 is where I go into that range, because it comports with the other information that we have and empirical data that we have. Again, that's the same exact source by Michael J. Sikora on PMC. You can see the illustration here to the right. Pottery assemblage of the Bantu, and why I lean towards the 2 to 3,000 year range, because we see stuff like this, the pottery assemblage. The source is new research pokes holes in the idea of Bantu expansion in West Africa by Olivier Marbot. Tuesday, April 13, 2021, theafricareport.com. It says the vast majority of pottery remains that were recovered date back to either the early Iron Age, i.e. a period around 800 BCE to 400 CE, or the late Iron Age beginning around 1000 CE. These two periods are separated by a sharp decline in human activity between 400 and 600 CE. So when we look at this, what's the starting point? 800 BCE. Why is that important? Because this is where we start hearing about the migrations from the Middle East due to what? The Assyrians coming in and wreaking havoc. This is around that time. So and then it goes with the legends of Israelites moving into Africa, going beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. If you guys know Zephaniah 3 and 10. For you guys watching, it relates that took place, and people would agree that this would have something to do with the migration as a result of the historical event of Assyrians coming in and sacking the land of Israel and Jerusalem and wreaking havoc on the northern kingdom in particular. And we know that was going on before that particular king that did it, the major expansion where he started replacing the peoples in the land. So we have a history. This is a historical record. It's in the Black Obelisk, it's in the Kirk inscriptions that Israelites were being deported and taken from those lands. So we know there was a migration and people moving. Then when we look at Sub-Saharan Africa, we see an influx of people coming in and starting to create settlements around this same time, 800 BCE. How do we know that? Because that's when we start seeing the pottery assemblage. Now, people might invoke older pottery assemblages, but those are small, sparse groups that probably are the results of those old hunter-gatherer groups, foraging groups. Before we were even there, A and B. When we look at the Bantu expansion, we can see when these people were getting there and proliferating. Okay? Let's move on. Ancient West African horses. Now, it doesn't take a rocket science for this. Everyone should know horses are not indigenous to West Africa. Horses are not indigenous to West Africa. So where did it come from? How did it get there? If it's in antiquity, someone had to carry these horses, had to travel with these horses to Sub-Saharan Africa. It's just common sense here. The antiquity of horses on the plateau is suggested by the horse tooth found in the Stone Age levels at Rop. Against this, it might be urged that there is no evidence of the uses of horses among the remains of the Iron Age note culture, which flourished on the plateau between the 5th century BC and the 2nd century AD. But negative evidence of this sort cannot be regarded as decisive. So when people try to invoke negative arguments, this is for anything, that's not a good argument. But what we do find, which we're about to show you, is this note culture in their identification of horses. And we already have a horse tooth found in the Stone Age level, so we know horses were there. It is suggestive that these horses of the plateau belong to a distinctive breed smaller than the horses of the surrounding lowlands. What will probably prove to be the earliest evidence of the horse in West Africa so far discovered is a horse tooth found in recent excavations by Nicholas David at a rock shelter at Rop in the plateau area of northern Nigeria. Now, Nigeria is the place of the note culture, right? And we find a horse tooth there, right? This tooth was found in a Stone Age level, thought likely to the date somewhere during the first millennium BC. Around 1000 BC. That would be 3,000 years ago, which comports with what? The Bantu expansion, the migration of e1b1a coming into Sub-Saharan Africa. All of this is starting to come together. Now, horses are not indigenous to Sub-Saharan Africa. So where did they get these horses from? Okay, we know where horses come from. The people of the steppes were already familiar with horses. Eurasia were already familiar with horses prior to this. In the Bronze Age, they were already familiar to it. Now, we know the Egyptians later adopted these horses, right? So you can say, oh, well, maybe they just came from Egypt. But the point is, horses are not indigenous to Sub-Saharan Africa. It says, but at the time of writing, radiocarbon dates for associated bone material were not yet available. Now watch this. Same source, The Horse in West African History by Robin Law. A find of horse teeth and bones and associated with Neolithic stone axes was also made in 1931 at the site of Wara Dawudu in the Adamawa province to the east of the plateau, but this find is poorly documented and precise dating is impossible. So this is also in Nigeria as well, finding horse teeth and bones with stone axes. Horse domestication in ancient Eurasia. This is a known fact. This is from the World of Oshu Civilization. Bertil Lyonet, page number 757. Substantial evidence for horse domestication and herding has also been documented in the Eurasian steppe rock art, beginning from the late 3rd or 2nd millennium BC. Unlike earlier periods, Paleolithic and Chalcolithic, when horses were primarily depicted in hunting scenes or alone, the Bronze Age petroglyphs show both horses being hunted and already domesticated. Engravings and carvings of the latter have been discovered at the Bronze Age site of Bachkonur in central Kazakhstan, depicting horses with straps attached to the nostrils or mouth. So these are the people that first domesticated the horse. We have the archaeological evidence to prove that. Then we start seeing the domestication of the horse in Nigeria. Where is this coming from, right? Watch this. Now we're going to deal with before we get into the finishing touches on this horse argument, the genetic makeup of the Oshus, what we just brought up, aka the BMAC culture. Guess what DNA was found there? The Oshu civilization spanned the area of modern southern Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan between 2400 and 1800 BC. Based on genetic analysis of the remnants found in the civilization cemeteries, there were a number of ethnic groups living in the area, including Middle Easterners, J1, J2, Indo-Europeans, R1b, R2, Caucasians, GT, Dravidians, L, and East Africans, e1b1a and e1b1b. So e1b1a and e1b1b was a part of this horse breeding culture. And then we see early e1b1a migrants in Nigeria with evidence of them having horses with the horse tooth and stone axes dating around 1000 BC. which would be 3,000 years ago. So you can see the connection that we're drawing here. So we know E1b1a was a part of the BMAC culture or the Oshus civilization, and they were known to have horse breeds. This is from Broken Timelines, Book 3, Jack Stornoway, page number 14 and 15. This is the BMAC culture location or the Oshus, close proximity to Iran, which would put E1b1a and E1b1b in the Iranian farming culture. As you can see on the map, you see the BMAC here, 2200 to 1700 BC. As you can see. And you see also a modern map with Iran. So it'll be right here in this area: Iran, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. Let me check the live, make sure we're still rolling. Yeah, we're still rolling. Shabbat shalom to everybody. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me blow this up. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate every one of you guys. Yeah, we rocking and rolling. All right, let's keep going. We rocking and rolling like Chuck Berry, man. As you can see, this would be located in modern day Iran, and by Afghanistan and Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan is up here. This is where they found E1b1a during the Bronze Age. And this was a horse breeding population as well. They had horses. I'm going to prove that. E1b1a found in Iranian farming populations. You can find this article on Wiki, Bactria Margiana Archaeologist Complex. That's what BMAC stands for. In 2018, Narasimhan and co-authors analyzed BMAC skeletons from the Bronze Age site of Bustan, Dizarkatan, Godner Tepe, and Sapali Tepe. The male specimens belong to haplogroup E1b1a, E1b1b. So E1b1a and E1b1b is in this cluster. And you have J markers, L markers, R markers, and you had a T marker there as well. So you can't speak about this place without speaking of the component that we belong to, E1b1a and E1b1b. It says a follow-up study by Narasimhan and co-authors 2019 suggested the primary BMAC population largely derived from preceding local Copper Age peoples who were in turn related to prehistoric farmers from the Iranian plateau. So not only we're seeing that these people would be related to people that already knew about horse breeding, we see that these people would be related to people that already knew about copper smelting. So that will go into iron smelting as well, and people that already were introduced to farming, which we know the Bantu spread into Sub-Saharan Africa, farming. So these people that are up in Iran, in Asia, we can see that we were there. We have a specimen with that DNA. So we can infer that we see these cultural forms that belong to South Asia. We see them because people from these areas came into Africa. And those people would be the bearers of E1b1a and E1b1b. This cannot be disputed because we're in the culture with the material culture. We're not alien to the culture. We were here. With these prehistoric farmers from the Iranian plateau and to a lesser extent early Anatolian farmers and hunter-gatherers from Western Siberia. All right, let's keep going. Horses in the BMAC culture or the Oshus civilization. Horses in excavations of Golnir Depi, a brick-lined burial pit, grave number 3200 of the Royal Necropolis, a horse skeleton was found in period 1, dating around 2200 BCE, along with a four-wheeled wooden wagon with bronze rims. So it's without dispute that these people were already breeding horses. They weren't hunting them. They were actually breeding these horses to ride them. And we see the same thing in the No culture. And this is some Oshus civil or the BMAC culture horses, which we did find E1b1a amongst these people in the British Museum. You see horses and a chariot and people driving the chariot. See, right here it says model of gold chariot drawn by 4 horses. Okay. Now, the Noak civilization may have used uses produce of cultivated plants, meat, or domestic animals for trade. Their incredibly unique sculptures may have also been articles used for trade, religious objects, or worship, or works of art. The sculptures were attractive and advanced than certain other works in West Africa at the time of discovery. Statues portrayed subjects in all manner of positions, including figures sitting on horseback, suggesting the civilization may have had the use of horses. Now, what did we just read? We read about the Oshu's horses. What did we read about that? Horses were found in the BMAC. And what did we read before that? E1b1a was found in this same culture that had horses. Rode horses, not eat them. They domesticated these horses to ride them. And we see these horses in the Noak culture. It's without dispute. Look at that. It says, let's read it again. The sculptures were more attractive and more advanced than certain other works in West Africa at the time of discovery. Statues portrayed subjects in all manners of positions, including figures sitting on horseback, suggesting the civilization may have had the use of horses. And that's from thinkafrica.net, Noak Civilization, published October 1st, 2018. Noak horses depicted in art. This commanding pair of wooden equestrian figures, including their horses, represent the fully cultivated Noak artistic style, illustrated here by dramatically archetypal heads and extended overhanging faces. The heads, as in Noak terracottas, are invariably proportionally large relative to their bodies, with finely detailed features. And this is from the ForshoreandDeeger.com about the Noak equestrian pair. And if you look this up on its website, this is what it looks like. These people obviously had horses. This is a Noak equestrian pair figurine. These people are riding on domesticated horses. So you guys see the link that I'm drawing here and the lines of connection. Okay. All right. So we can see and draw inference on and use abductive reasoning to see how these horses got here and where they came from, because we already know E1b1a was in the BMAC culture, Iran, Turkmenistan, that area. And these people already were accustomed to breeding horses and domesticating horses. And we can see that it found its way to Nigeria through the Noak equestrian pair. This is where Noak is located, West Africa, Nigeria. You can see on the screen. Early Jewish presence in Africa. Let's deal with this real quick. The Jews of North Africa by Sarah Taib Carlene, page number 16 to 19 is what we're going to be covering. It says Carthage and the Phoenicians from 813 to 146 BCE. Let's go back. The Jews are described as being native to North Africa, almost as part of its flora and fauna. Ever since historians and archaeologists started to write on this region with regards to the foundation of Carthage in 813 BC by Dido, queen of the Phoenicians. However, it's also possible that Jews had settled in North Africa prior to this date, as we know that King Solomon, who reigned 973 to 936 BCE, had excellent economic relations with King of Tyre, Hiram, who reigned from 969 to 935 BCE. Indeed, one can read in the Bible. And she goes over the verse when King Solomon made that voyage. Marcel Simon, one of our principal sources of information about the Jewish communities of pre-Islamic North Africa, surmises that although it is difficult to pinpoint exactly when Jews first settled in the region. I also want to make this point here. When we're putting these Jews in North Africa, where did E1b1a come from? According to the migratory patterns we read, Northern Africa. And then penetrate sub-Saharan Africa. And we see these Jews coming in during this time. It's that it is almost certain that there were Jews during the Phoenician Empire, or before, and certainly before the Romans, i.e., before 146 BCE. Hertzberg presumes that North African Jewry possibly goes back to the time when Tyrians and Sidonites settled on the African coast. So that's huge. Let's keep going. Same source. According to St. Jerome, under the Pax Romana, the Jewish communities underwent a period of great prosperity all the way from India to the western tip of Africa. To the western tip of Africa. These are recorded facts, man. So we have an ancient presence in Africa, in West Africa, and we're tying it together with the scientific model of migratory routes of e1b1a penetrating Sub-Saharan Africa much recently, within the last 3,000 years. Expansion. The agriculturalist expansion that had the greatest impact on Africa is the one associated with people who speak languages of the Bantu family. So this is why they call it the Bantu expansion. And these are agriculturalists carrying agrarian culture. Or what they would get that from? Well, we read earlier that they would have been a part of a prehistoric Iranian farming population. So they would have already knew about farming prior to coming to Africa. And that's David Reich's book, Who We Are and How We Got Here, page number 277 to 278. Again, as a reminder, e1b1a, the African lineages that most likely dispersed south from northern Africa within the last 3,000 years with the Bantu agricultural expansion, the most common lineage among African Americans. What have we covered so far? They would have brought farming with them, and they would have brought domestication of horses with them. And that's Abraham's Children by John and Teen, page number 266 and 267. And we have the timestamps to keep it within this 3,000 year, less than 3,000 year time frame. Same book by David Reich, Who We Are and How We Got Here. Same page. People from the culture lived at the boundary of the forest and expanding savanna and developed a highly productive set of crops that was capable of supporting dense populations. So this was a farming population, right? By about 2,500 years ago. This would be around 500 BC. They had spread as far as Lake Victoria in Eastern Africa and mastered iron tool making technology. Where does iron metallurgy come from? Southwest Asia. Where does the horse breeding come from? Asia, South Asia. So where does farming begin? Southwest Asia. We see these farming populations that we belong to, we found our sample in. So it's easier to draw these lines of inference and use abductive reasoning to surmise that these people would have came from Southwest Asia. And we got the time frames. Here's the timestamps, 2,500 years ago. And by around 1,700 years ago, they had reached Southern Africa. 1,700 years ago, that's 300 CE. The consequence of this expansion is that the great majority of people in Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa speak Bantu languages, which are most diverse today in present-day Cameroon, consistent with the theory that Proto-Bantu languages originated there and were spread by the culture that also expanded from there around 4,000 years ago. So he posits 4,000, but I keep it within 3,000 because the archaeological finds comport with it. Let's keep going. Now, let's deal with Eldad Haidani account of Israelites migrating. And you can find this account on chabad.org. According to the story related by Eldad the Danite, who had it told to him by his ancestors. So again, this is oral. This is him recapitulating oral history, which we know majority of the ancient world would have operated like this. We bring up Herodotus all the time. He was recapitulating oral history from the locals of the places he were interviewing. He just wrote them down, but they exist as oral history first. So Eldad the Danite is pretty much recapitulating oral history here. It says, who had it told to him by his ancestors, who in turn were told about it by their ancestors from generation to generation. Back to those faithful days, the 10 tribes were not lost at all. Eldad the Danite related that his own tribe, the Danites, did not wait to be exiled when the Assyrian Empire grew strong and mighty. They saw that there was no hope for them to remain free. Moreover, the kingdom of the 10 tribes was at war with the kingdom of Judah. And the Danites did not want to fight against their own brethren, so they decided to leave the land of Israel and find a safe place for themselves. It was in the 8th year of the reign of Ahaz of Judah, that is in the year 3191, 14 years before the fall of Samaria, that the Danites took their wives and children, their sheep and cattle, and left the land of Israel. They went by the way of Egypt further down the upper Nile River and settled in Ethiopia, in East Africa. The Danites were great warriors, and after fighting many battles against native tribes, they established themselves securely with a kingdom of their own. And real quick sidebar, this is why many people in the state of Israel accept the Ethiopian Jews as real Jews because off of this historical narrative. So this narrative has been taken seriously. So let that be noted. Same source. And also those tribes with the war. It says later on, after the destruction of Beth Hamikdosh, 3 more tribes joined the tribe of Dan, Eldad related. They were the tribes of Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The 4 tribes lived side by side in peace and brotherhood. The region where they lived was a fertile one. The only trouble was that the surrounding tribes were unfriendly. The 4 tribes had to fight them constantly, so each tribe went to war for 3 months in a year, coming back with much spoil and with many slaves, which they divided among all the tribes. Their elders and scholars received a great share of the produce and riches, so that they could study the Torah in peace and security. This sounds similar to the depopulation, if you will, of Sub-Saharan Africa. Because we do know there was a depopulation of Sub-Saharan Africa. Because many of the original Africans, the A and B haplogroups we were invoking earlier, they eventually got reduced. They would have been a bigger population, but e1b1a came to Sub-Saharan Africa and started reducing the male population and sleeping and reproducing with their women. That's pretty much the consensus. And we have a oral testimony recorded by Eldad the Danite that pretty much says the same thing. That these foreigners came in, these Israelites came in and started to reduce the autochthonous original peoples of these areas. Started to have war with them and kill them off. Watch this. This is Rain J. Herrera and Ralph Garcia's Beltran's page number 407-408, Ancestral DNA, Human Origins and Migrations. This is the section dealing with the Bantu expansion, chapter 11. Sub-Saharan Africa is the most genetically diverse region in the world. Although the Bantu dispersal is traditionally an intra-African migration, its impact is felt outside the continent. Actively and passively, the Bantu phenomenon changed Sub-Saharan Africa and beyond. It had a powerful homogenization effect, reducing the amount of diversity. How? Because they were killing the natives, the indigenous. They were killing them. Just like we just read here in the Eldad account. So each tribe went to war for 3 months in a year, coming back with much spoil and with many slaves, which they divided among all the tribes. Let's read here. The homogenization effect. They started reducing the diversity by killing off the males. It says reducing the amount of diversity. The end result of the Bantu expansion was the assimilation of the Bantu way of life by the indigenous people and the elimination of many native singularities. Translation: people were getting killed. People were dying off. We reduced the population, we reduced their males, and we began to multiply and boom during this time. What we're seeing in Eldad the Danite's work could very well be a mirror image or mythicized version, if you will, of what we're calling the Bantu expansion. Let's keep going. The Levite migration to Havilah. When the Beth Hamakadosh was destroyed and the Jews were led captive into Babylon, the Chaldeans demanded of the sons of Moses, the Levites, who were singers in the Beth Hamakadosh, sing to us of the songs of Zion. But the sons of Moses wept before God and said, how can we sing the song of God on foreign soil? And they cut their fingers, saying, these fingers which played the flutes and harps in the Beth Hamakadosh shall not play in an impure land. Seeing their great distress, God sent a cloud which carried them with their tents, wives and children and sheep and cattle to the land of Havilah, the land of gold, and put them down there in the middle of the night. So, of course, it has mythic implications here. But again, myth can encapsulate realities. And I look at this as just a telling of a migration from the land of Israel into Africa. It says, the noise which the Jews of the 4 tribes heard that night was very great. In the morning, they saw a great multitude of their brethren, the sons of Moses, who had landed nearby. But a mighty river separated them. The waters of the rivers flowed with great force, throwing up stones and spray, and creating a mighty roar and rumbling. This went on all week, and no one could cross the river. But when Shabbat came, the river became quieted and rested calmly. A great cloud descended on it. And again, no one could come near the river. They called the river Sambat Yom, meaning the Shabbat River. And here's the thing about this. Again, more mythic implications here and mythology being employed in this history, but it's still telling of a migration. Now, with this river of sand and stone, if you will, this river of sand and stone could very well be the Sahara Desert. And what he's explaining, not being across, could very well be telling of a sandstorm. So you have to take the mythic elements out and compare and contrast with reality. Like I always mention, the Suniki people had a mythic story as well. They would sacrifice to their deity, the snake deity. And they believed that doing that sacrifice, they would sacrifice a little girl, by the way. And they believed that in doing so, that the snake deity will bless their river, the Niger Bend, and it will bring forth rain and bring forth gold. Well, that actually has some truth to it. That the waters would overflow the banks during the heavy rain seasons and bring forth what they call alluvial deposits, water deposits that carried gold in that region of the Niger Bend. So just because something has mythic elements does not mean it does not encapsulate or capitulate reality. All right. So where is this Havilah located that they're talking about? I believe it's the Havilah being pointed out in Genesis, the 2nd chapter. And according to W.F. Albright, page number 20 of the location of Garden of Eden, he says the Havilah of Genesis chapter 2 refers certainly to the African Havilah, rather than to the Asiatic Havilah, which lay opposite, since it is said to produce good gold, gum resin, and malachite, all of which are important products of the Nubian desert, and 2 of which at least do not seem to have been found in Western Arabia. This is the country which is called Punt, and the Egyptian inscriptions, in which provided rich treasures of gold, gums, and spices, and also malachite. Though gold and malachite were drawn in great quantities from the Nubian desert directly east of Upper Egypt, from Asna southward end of Nubia. So this is where I put Havilah, Havilah meaning the place of gold. I put it in Africa, don't locate it in Arabia. So these people would have been, according to my model, going to Africa. The mythic tales of the tribes of Israel and Africa. Eldad the Danite went on to relate that the 4 tribes, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, did communicate with the sons of Moses by means of pigeon. If they wanted to ask them about a law or tradition, they used to write the question on a piece of parchment to tie it on the leg of the pigeon, which carried it across the river. In the same way, they received the reply. Same source by elshabbat.org by Nissan Mendel. Legend of migrations of the ancient Israelites. there are men of Israel in the land of Persia who say that in the mountains dwell four of the tribes of Israel, namely the tribe of Dan, the tribe of Zebulun, the tribe of Asher, and the tribe of Naphtali. They are governed by their own prince, Joseph the Levite. Among them are learned scholars. They sow and reap and go forth to war as far as the land of Cush by the way of the desert. What Benjamin of Tudela is saying comports with what Eldad Danite is positing in his work as well. They are in league with the Kofar al-Turak, pagan tribesmen who worship the wind and live in the wilderness. The Sambatyon may be a reference to the Sahara Desert. I covered this briefly. Sahel is the Arabic word for shore. It is as if the Sahara was a great ocean of sand and rock. The camels that transport goods across the desert were ships, and the large market towns were seaports. So we can see that this is how the ancients would look at the Sahara, as a great body of water, like exactly how you would look at a river or a lake or an ocean. This is how they would look at it. How we know that? Because the word Sahel, that's below the Sahara, means shore. That's what it translates to in the Arabic. And the source is The Empires of Medieval West Africa by David C. Conrad. Pages 35 to 37 is where you can find that. Oral testimonies are valid sources, pure Oxford. And this is from the Oxford Encyclopedia of African Historiography, Methods and Sources, page number 22. Oral traditions were performances before they became written accounts, like we brought out with Eldad the Danite. He was recapitulating what his ancestors told him. It says they contain evidence both about the construction of the past and the past itself. So when people try to dismiss oral testimony, academia is not completely dismissing oral testimony. They're not doing that. This is from the Oxford Encyclopedia of African Historiography, by the way. They're not doing that. They understand that oral testimonies contain evidence about the construction of the past and the past itself. The influences of writing on the contents of performed oral traditions do not extinguish their value as evidence of past events and past political realities. So that's that on that. So if anybody's trying to doubt oral testimony, always refer them to Oxford. Let's keep going. The Soninke people's oral tradition. The Soninke people's idea about their history are expressed in the legend of Ouagadougou. This is an oral tradition told by many generations of Gasseri, Soninke professional storytellers and musicians. Details vary from one version to the next, but the legend generally describes the origins and early deeds of different Soninke clans. The legend often begins by describing how the ancestor Dinga came from somewhere in the Middle East. This comports. Now we're doing a full circle here. It's getting cyclical here. We shown that horses would have originally been domesticated outside of Africa and Eurasia. We shown that the Oshu civilization, where we do find e1b1a, was present there and could have carried that domestication into Africa. We see that. We've shown metallurgy, iron metallurgy amongst these people, which we know in Southwest Asia. We've shown that the farming and agriculture would have came from outside of the region of Sub-Saharan Africa as well. And now we're showing another oral testimony that's saying that these people came from outside of Sub-Saharan Africa, from somewhere in the Middle East. And this is where Ouagadougou is located, ancient Ouagadougou, west coast of Africa. The Limba oral tradition. Here's another oral tradition here. The members of this community, Jewish states of the Sahara, claim that there are ancestors that came from Palestine via the edge of the Sahara at the time of Nebuchadnezzar. This is the Black Jews of Africa by Edith Bruder, page number 103. And the Limba tradition says the same thing. It says, but according to the Limba oral legend, they are Israelites deported by King Nebuchadnezzar from Judea to southern Arabia, a land they call Sina. The Limba cite passages in Ezra 2:35 and Nehemiah 7:38, where it says almost 3,930 30 sons of Sinai returned from exile in 538 BCE at the behest of the Persian king Cyrus to rebuild the temple of the Babylonians. The temple the Babylonians had destroyed. Source: Abraham's Children by John Tyne, page number 116 to 117. The legend of the Balfour. In Mauritania, according to Arab sources and certain oral traditions of Western Africa, the first inhabitants of Western Africa were the Balfour, whose Jewish origin is enigmatic and controversial. Following a process of organization, functioning, and decline of all Sudanese empires described by Charles Montel, one might assume that a Balfour existed several centuries before Islam. And this is what we're bringing up. E1b1a definitely when it came here before Islam, and we're saying that these people would have been Middle Eastern migrants coming in, bringing in Middle Eastern culture with them, like the chicken, Southwest Asian chicken. The first people to eat and consume chicken was actually in the Middle East, was in the Levant, well, in Palestine. We covered that in prior episodes. The cowpeas, the glass beads, the metallurgy, the pyrotechnology, the coconuts, the bananas, the melons, can all say have a Southwest Asian origin. And the legend is these these Jewish people were in Sub-Saharan Africa prior to Islam. So these Balfour seem to have introduced the cultivation of palm trees, horse breeding. Hold on, didn't we bring that up earlier? Horse breeding being associated with these early Jews that would have penetrated the Sahara. All right, horse breeding, new irrigation methods, and metallurgy. Okay, metallurgy, horse breeding. We know these are things that exist outside of Africa and finally makes its way into Africa through endemic or demic diffusion, meaning people had to bring these ideas and concepts with them. So according to a tradition reported by Andre J. Lucas, the Balfour were the first ones to plant palm trees and to dig deep in large wells. The Mu'amin, the craftsmen, make and have always made work of art. And this will also go back to the terracotta that the Note culture was actually creating and farming, right? It says they are called Yahud because according to legend, only Jews in Mauritania were craftsmen. And you know that the Mu'amin have neither homeland nor tribe. And this is Black Jews of Africa by Edith Bruder, page number 108. So the source population for metallurgy, the people of the BMAC culture were very proficient at working in a variety of metals, including bronze, copper, silver, and gold. This is attested through the many metal artifacts found throughout the sites. So we already have a population that were familiar with the metallurgy, and we see E1b1a and E1b1b within this culture. So there's no mystery to me why we start seeing iron metallurgy in Africa. It's coming from these people that were already accustomed to it. Migration 2.5 thousand years ago into Sub-Saharan Africa. It says the region of Sub-Saharan Africa at this period consisted of two types of land. Savanna, consisting of grassland with few trees, covered most of the northern part of the region and some parts of the south. Small farming communities lived in the northern fertile area, which was suitable for growing crops and raising livestock. Most of the southern part was covered by tropical forests, and here along the coastal areas, people lived as hunter-gatherers. These hunter-gatherers would be haplogroup A and B. They're not related to us until we came in and started, like I said earlier, started to depopulate them. This is about 2,500 years ago, peoples from northern Africa started moving into southern Africa. Let me read that again. About 2,500 years ago, people from northern Africa started moving to southern Africa, bringing a new way of life with them. These tribes lived in settled villages, grew crops like sorghum and millet, beans and cowpeas, and herded cattle, sheep, and goats. They also knew how to use iron, and each group made pottery with its own distinctive style. What did we just read? Are you guys paying attention? The people of the BMAC culture were very proficient at working in a variety of metals, including bronze, copper, silver, and gold. This is attested through many metal artifacts found throughout the sites. So a metallurgy population obviously moved into Southern Africa, they already knew how to use iron. That's clear. This was the beginning of the African Iron Age. Iron was the first metal used by Africans living south of the Sahara Desert, and it was spread through Africa by farmers, which is also tying them back to these BMAC people where we see our DNA within those groups. And it also talks about sometime in the first millennium BC, traders probably started to cross the Sahara Desert using horse-drawn chariots. And the proof of that is the Note culture had horses. And the source is the Encyclopedia of the Ancient World by Shona Grimbley, page number 46. The Iron Note culture, same book, same page. The early cultures, the Note culture, which lasted from about the 6th century BC until the first few centuries AD, was the earliest known ironworking community in West Africa. The Note grew sorghum and kept herds of cattle. So we can clearly see that this is a farming population. They dealt with iron metallurgy, and we have a time stamp. This is around 6th century BC. So it's lining up with the history, the legends, the oral testimony of these Jews and Israelites coming in from the Middle East, and they're bringing in culture from the Middle East that is not indigenous to Sub-Saharan Africa. The Bantu carried material culture from outside of Africa. These early Bantus also brought with them agricultural technology, which included crops such as banana. Bananas are not indigenous to Africa. They're from Southwest Asia. Yams, coconuts are from Southwest Asia. Sorghum, millet, cowpeas, and melons, in addition to iron and copper metallurgy. Although these domesticated species were transported by the advancing Bantus along the eastern and western African streams, many had origins outside of Africa. So, how did they get all this stuff? Maybe because they began outside of Africa and migrated into Africa. It says, for example, the humpback cattle is from India, whereas chickens, bananas, and coconuts were imports from Southeast Asia. And this is Ancestral DNA by Rain J. Herrera, Ralph Garcia Bertrand, page number 430 to 431. Goats from Southwest Asia. This is why chromosome research suggests a common origin for goat patrolines on the coast of the Levant and the Maghreb, reflecting, according to authors, a dispersal of male goats from Southwest Asia via early maritime colonization or commerce. So even the goats point to Southwest Asia. Bananas come from Southeast Asia. Oxford Handbook of African Archaeology, page number 834 to 836. It says subsistence information is sparse at most sites, with bones usually destroyed by acidic soils through faunal remains confirm. Though faunal remains confirm hunting, fishing, and keeping of caprines. Yams must have played a significant role, but leave no detectable traces far in the archaeological record. Intriguingly, the earliest direct archaeobotanical evidence for cultivation consists of banana phytoliths at Nakang, north of Yaoundé. As domesticated bananas originated in Southeast Asia, their presence in Cameroon's rainforest as early as 2500 before present is unexpected and requires substantiation by additional evidence. Oh, it's expected according to our model, because we expect to see people from Asia bringing in culture from Asia, bringing in material culture, bringing in crops from Asia. And we see bananas in Cameroon 2,500 years ago with a crop, with a fruit that originated in Southeast Asia. All right. Bantu derived from a people familiar with pyrotechnology. Oxford Handbook 816, 817. A third factor must also be considered with reference to ironworking in particular, and that is pyrotechnology. The point here is that it's frequently stated that ironworking could not have been invented independently by any given people unless they had been practicing other fireborne technologies that required high temperatures, such as kiln fired pottery, glass beads, and clay figurines, but especially the smelting of copper or lead. This lets you know that these people came from outside of Sub-Saharan Africa because there was no copper or Bronze Age in Sub-Saharan Africa. They went straight to iron. So anybody trying to push a serendipitous discovery of iron, you have a lot of gaps to fill in. How did they do that? It's a very difficult task to create iron. And without no prior understanding of pyrotechnology? No, these people already had the understanding of pyrotechnology and iron metallurgy before they penetrated the Sahara. Full mastery of iron metallurgy and SSA. Says with these ideas, which SSA means Sub-Saharan Africa, it says with these ideas in mind, we can now examine the appearance of metallurgy in Sub-Saharan Africa and its subsequent development. While Mediterranean Africa, Asia, and Europe went through all three metallurgical ages, copper, bronze, and iron, the available evidence indicates that Sub-Saharan Africa did not experience the first two, at least at an elaborate level. Instead, it moved into iron production straight away and almost exclusively, with only limited copper and bronze working. By the mid-late first millennium BC, several areas of Sub-Saharan Africa were in full mastery of iron working technology. Why? Because they come from a population that were already accustomed and went through the other two levels of iron metallurgy in the Bronze Age. They already went through that. So once they got to Africa, they understood iron and they began to spread. This is also how we defeated a lot of the autochthonous people of Africa, because they were using stone tools and we were using iron tools and weapons. So we had superior weapons than the original Africans that were in Sub-Saharan Africa. Timestamps of the metallurgy and SSA. Early copper working sites include Agadez and Azalik in central Niger, 900 to 300 BC. Akhut in western Mauritania, 800 to 200 BC. And Kansanshi in northern Zambia, 4th century AD or CE, right? So we see a late appearance of the other metals. We see iron first and we see these come later. In other areas and localities of the world, you usually see copper, bronze, and then iron, but you do not see that in Western Sub-Saharan Africa. External origin of iron metallurgy. Africa, in the apparent absence of of Chalcolithic and Bronze Ages, have made the question of how that region acquired the knowledge of metal production in the first place difficult and complex. As already indicated, two schools of thought exist. One advocating external origin, adoption. The other subscribing to local invention, serendipity. The external origin school is premised upon the assumption that Sub-Saharan Africa acquired the knowledge of metallurgy at a late date when compared to neighboring regions of Asia and Europe. During the 3rd millennium BC, bronze was already in regular use in the Near East and Eastern Mediterranean. And a millennium later, iron took over from it as a regular utilitarian metal there, whereas Sub-Saharan Africa became a regular producer and user of copper and iron only several centuries after that. Despite the likelihood that copper working in Mauritania and Niger reaches back to the first half of the 1st millennium BC, this has not altered the external origin viewpoint, since at least some of the artifacts at Akhut, I don't know how to say this, I'm just going to call it AK, resembles others from Iberia and North Africa. So if it resembles stuff from Iberia and North Africa, we can clearly see where this is coming from. It's not rocket science here. Same book, 817, 818 is the page. Different routes have been proposed for the introduction of ironworking in Sub-Saharan Africa. Trans-Saharan route, or routes tracing back to the early mid-1st millennium BC Phoenician settlements at Carthage and modern Tunisia, has attracted considerable interest. And we read earlier in Sarah Taib Carleen's book that we would have had ancient Israelites there in ancient Carthage. Said, but efforts to uncover direct evidence to support this continue to meet with little or no success. For example, while Carthage was founded in the late 9th century BC, iron did not gain regular usage there until the 3rd century BC. All right. Although there is no evidence for any of these routes having been used, an external source for Sub-Saharan metallurgy continues to be strongly advocated. Why? Because we don't see it in Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. It just pops up. So the logical conclusion would be that it has an external origin. People from outside of Africa brought it in. And so not least because of the continued evidence within Sub-Saharan Africa for iron smelting, having been preceded by a less complex low temperature, which involves a relatively complex pyrotechnology, having been preceded by less complex low temperature pyrotechnology such as those required to produce copper, lead, tin, glass, or kiln-fired pottery and terracotta, which we see terracotta amongst the notes, so they understood this. To postulate, here's a quote right here. To postulate the invention of iron smelting without the knowledge of copper smelting is akin to claiming the invention of the movie camera, but with no knowledge of photography. Exactly. You have to understand photography first before you get into filmmaking. Same thing with iron. You have to understand copper and bronze smelting before you go straight to iron. This is why this is strongly advocated for an external origin. Early settlements comport with Eldad's account. So when we look at the early towns of Niger and Nigeria, you can clearly see when they got there, it says the principal settlement during the Horizon 1 period is between 800 and 400 BC. Was at least 19 HA in area, with some smaller satellite sites. Beyond this, there are traces of earthen architecture, rice agriculture, and livestock keeping, and strong evidence for ironworking during this period. A few indicators of long-distance commerce apart from a couple of glass fine and fines beads. So again, these people weren't doing long-distance commerce. They were bringing this culture with them into this place and reproducing the culture within Western Africa. And it dates within recent times, within 3,000 years ago, within the spread of e1b1a into Sub-Saharan Africa, which has been the theme of this video. All right. Original Israelite cluster. The History of African Gene Flow in the Southern Europeans, Levantines, and Jews by Priya Merjani, April 21st, 2011. A parsimonious explanation for these observations is that they reflect a history in which many of the Jewish groups descend from a common ancestral population, which was itself admixed with Africans prior to the beginning of the Jewish diaspora that occurred in 8th to 6th century BC. So we know the original Israelite cluster that existed before the diaspora had Africans amongst them. And what DNA did they use to determine this? They used the Yoruba DNA. What's the main haplogroup, the primary haplogroup of the Yoruba, the predominant haplogroup of the Yoruba? e1b1a. So this would have consisted of e1b1a. Okay. Let's keep going. Now, before we close, we're going to deal with Derek Lang. Derek Lang is a professor of African history of the University of Bayreuth in Germany. Using hitherto unexplored sources, presents the development of the West African empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai from a new perspective of ethnogenesis. He maintains that the main clan and state structure of several West African kingdoms are based on the same dualistic pattern as that of the Canaanite, Israelite, and hence also Phoenician societies. Supported by written records, oral traditions, and cult dramatic performances, these similarities suggest the existence of an early trans-Saharan contacts reaching back to the pre-Roman period. The Phoenician trade appears to have been the single most important factor explaining the transfer of these organizational forms from North Africa to the Sub-Saharan region, where they could be particularly prominent in the Hausa and Yoruba societies. The Black Jews of Africa by Edith Bruder, page number 113. Now, what did we just read? We just read that they used the Yoruba Nigerians to represent Sub-Saharan Africans in the study of the African gene flow within the Southern Europeans, Levantines, and Jews. And we just read that the ancient Israelites was itself admixed with African. Which Africans? The Yorubas. The same DNA as the Yorubas. Prior to that. And we read here the Phoenician trade appears to have been the single most important factor explaining the transfer of these organizational forms from North Africa to Sub-Saharan Africa, which is what we brought up in the beginning of the video. The e1b1a spread it from the north to the south. They came from North Africa and then penetrated Sub-Saharan Africa. around 3,000 years ago, which comports and lines up with the Bantu expansion, which lines up with the metallurgy sites that we find in the Note culture, which lines up with the horses that we find, which lines up with the melons, the coconuts, the bananas that we find in Sub-Saharan Africa. It's comparable timelines. African E3A, E1b1a is the African lineage that most likely dispersed south from northern Africa. What did we just read here? The Phoenician trade appears to have been the single most important factor explaining the transform of these organizational forms from North Africa to the Sub-Saharan region. Back to this source. African E3A, an African lineage that most likely dispersed south from northern Africa within the last 3,000 years with the Bantu agricultural expansion, the most common lineage among African Americans. Now, David Reich's work, 3,000 years ago, East African pastoralists, Levantine farmers, plus East African foragers. 3,000 years ago, you have Levantine farmers coming into Africa. What does this line up with? Within the last 3,000 years, with the Bantu agriculture expansion, we see E3A, E1b1a spread and disperse into Sub-Saharan Africa around that time. Same time you see Levantine farmers coming to Africa, it's the same time you see the Bantu expansion take off and spread from the North Africa into Sub-Saharan Africa. 2,000 years ago, you get your present-day West Africans. Source, who we are and how we got here. David Reich, page number 6. Now, the summation of the matter, the conclusion of the matter. E1b1a, aka E3A, has been hypothesized to migrate into Sub-Saharan Africa in recent times, less than 3,000 years ago. The proposed migratory routes overlap the oral testimonies of the origin of the modern people of Western Africa. These early migrants carried South Asian material culture, which could be an indicator of where these people come from. The Eldad the Danite account speaks of Israelites penetrating Africa and reducing the autochthonous tribes, a theme that definitely occurred during the Bantu expansion. The timeline of entry into Africa via the Levant correlates with the spread of E1b1a into Sub-Saharan Africa. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Any questions? Any questions from the audience? We're doing a Q&A segment. Inspired by my brother, Ivory. So I decided to go ahead and implement that into my presentations going forth. Anybody has any questions? All right. Let's see what you guys are talking about in the chat. Looks like you guys were busy while I was presenting. Let's see. Shalom to everybody. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. You know how we rocking, man. Is there a troll down here? Somebody, you guys dealing with it looks like you guys been fighting and arguing in the chat. Yes, Yashar, this is why we see a great number of E1b1a in Central and West Africa, because the Bantu expansion, we began to kill off other groups and reduce their presence in those areas and Y chromosomes. Niri Yahoo says, according to Sylvia Winkleman, the BMAC culture is also related to the Proto-Elamite and Old Elamite. Okay, that's interesting. Herodotus wrote these things down using Greek based on Canaanite written script. They owe everything to the Semitic and Hamitic peoples. Joshua's bringing up the Ebo, Gad, Dan, Naphtali, and Asher tribes that would have been a part of that Eldad Danite migration. This information about the Ebo being Gad, Dan, Naphtali, Asher is found in the Talmud. Yeah, share that source, man. Joshua, share me that. Bring that source to me. He says Havilah, Somaliland. Okay. He So the Sambation is the oral story of the Igbo. Okay. Yeah, I need to see the evidence on that. I can implicate that. I can implement that into a future presentation as well. Judah Business, I disagree with you there. The name Sahara is Sarah, different tongue, same thing. No, the word Sahara means desert in Arabic. That's what it means. It means desert. Emit Samla or Somalia, I guess that's what that's supposed to say. It says Yap positive mutations, an Asiatic mutation originated in Asia and back migrated into Africa through haplogroup e1b1a, e1b1b. I completely agree that we are actually Southwest Asian and not originally indigenous to Africa. I completely agree with that. And we migrated into Africa and conquered Africa. I've heard this argument before. The So Udan, land So plus Judah Udan is perhaps the pathway where the Israelites travel from Asia to Ethiopia and through the Sahara Desert into West Central and South Africa. I can dig it. Yeah, that doesn't mean Sahara. Sahara means desert. It's an Arabic term for desert. Okay. Joshua going in the comments, he says Greek, Roman, and Arabic slave trades helped scatter our people throughout North Africa, Asia Minor, Middle East, Asia, Pacific Islands, and then the Americas. Limba also lived in Congo and Angola as magicians. Yeah, the Limba are spread out. They're dispersed. They're Bantu people. Oh, shalom, sister. Greetings. She's watching from Germany. It says many Limba were taken into Haiti, which is why the Haitians have a lot of African indigenous practices. I would like to read some research on that, brother. If you have that, email me, HebrewJedi@gmail.com. Laban Ben Yesharon says Sudan derives from the word Sud in the variant Old South Arabian Gaze pronunciation, which means black. Yeah, that's how I've always understood it. Aswad in Old South Arabian Keys. Yes, shalom. Palm trees are not native to Africa. That is a fact. They were imported. They were imported in by early Yahudi. Yep, brought to Africa by Semitic people. That's a fact. Haplogroups prove nothing. Your autosomal DNA is what you're made up of, pretending to be Jewish because one haplogroup is no good here. Haplogroups actually prove who you descend from. So if you want to determine where you descend from on the male line, you have to use Y-DNA. And the Bible tells you the progenitors of the Israelites are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So if they would have lived, they would have Y chromosomes. And we're saying that we descend from that Y chromosome. Neri Yahoo says, I appreciate you mentioning the Saniki because my ancestors are related to them, known as the Mundi and the Mundane. I'm from a subgroup known as the Bisa, formerly known as Dan Busa of the Dan branch of the Mundi. Okay. Yobita says, you're literally grasping at straws. There's no evidence of Israelite haplogroups, and a haplogroup is a tiny portion of an individual's entire genome. Haplogroups, again, show direct lineage ancestors. We're looking for lineage ancestors. Autosomal DNA shows you who you mix with or who your ancestors mix with. It doesn't give you a direct ancestry. So when you want to deal with a direct ancestry, you have to look at the Y chromosome and say, okay, what set of males come from what set of males? We're saying Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would have had E markers, and we have E markers, and we descend from that because Y chromosomes are passed down from father to son, unbroken. It's an unbroken chain. So if you had a child, Yobetta, in East Asia, and 500 years from now, he continues that male line, the male line, that is still your descendant, even though he might have mixed with the local population, the local women there, and for subsequent generations. His autosomal makeup or ancestry estimate could be 90% East Asian, but he's still your descendant. Ariad Nasi research says some BMAC groups were also making steel with advanced ironworking techniques. Many archaeologists confirmed this, and Jet Magazine also did an article on it years ago. Right. So that puts our people in a population that already understood that. That's the connection I was making during the presentation. He said, where exactly is the Garden of Eden then? I'm not getting into that because that's not the point of the presentation, but I know why you're bringing it up because I put Havilah in Africa. Jews and Jewish people are new people. Neither have nothing to do with the Afro-Hebrew people antiquity. Well, I mean, you could say the word, the pronunciation Jew is new, but Jews are an ancient people. Melanesians may be Semites then. I always wondered why scholarship ignored Aborigines and Adamese and other black. Yeah, those with haplogroup D are Shemites according to our breakdown and perspective and paradigm. Shalom, James. I'm going to put the link to the chat if anybody wants to come in and ask questions respectfully. You know what I mean? So he said, Be Proud says, yo, better. How do you explain about the limba and the falasha if haplogroups don't matter? Because that is the only way they could be identified. Their autosomal would be African. Exactly. Thank you, sister. Sister with some sense, man. Doesn't matter about your autosomal. Shalom. Yeah, shalom to my brother James. Oh, we got Avery in the building. Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Great presentation, by the way. Really thorough, really nice. All your sources and everything.
All praises to the Most High, man. You got anything you want to add or bring up?
No, I'm just here to support you and listen to the show. Yeah, I don't have anything to add at the moment. When I think of something, though, I will. But everything was spot on and good. You know, you had all the sources. So.
Oh, were you able to catch it from the beginning, or?
Yes, I saw it from the start to the finish.
Okay. D-Red, talk to me.
Shit, what it do, baby? Shit, man. Look, I'm just glad you did it, man. You and the brother, y'all put together these presentations, man, and pretty much echoing stuff that we've been saying for, I think, between me, you, James, Divine Prospect. I think at that point we were the only four talking about it. The way we talk about it, about the pre-exilic migrations, the cultural affinities that were brought to West Africa. Like I said, it's good to see the young brother. Him coming up, and so for years it was just me, you, and James. Really, you see what I'm saying? And so man, it's just good to finally start getting some of this stuff out, man, and putting some of these little questions to bed. So and you know, it's showing that Israelites ain't afraid to use DNA because DNA actually corroborates our story. It don't hurt our story. But they had a spook for a while, having us believing that some kind of way that it didn't. That's because they say this organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. So when they got the organized lie going, it kind of had everybody spooked about what the truth is. So
right, yeah, man, yeah. And yo, better. I invite you onto the channel, brother. Come on the link, hit the link, and let's discuss this because you guys are confused with autosomal DNA. Autosomal DNA doesn't give you lineage ancestors. We're talking about lineage ancestry. Again, if you had a child in Turkey,
can I speak on that right quick, because first of all, that's what what Yeshua saying is true, because that's what the horizontal districts matrix is. It'll show you. So say let's use the J haplogroup, right? This is everybody we want to try to say the J haplogroup is the Jewish haplogroup. All right, so most Jews have J1, right? But when they look at the autosomal DNA, It shows that yes, they're related to Middle Easterners, but they're not related to Levantines. You know what I'm saying? And the horizontal districts matrix will show you who you are most closely related to on your Y chromosomal side and your X chromosomal side. So like the Jews in the J1 haplogroup, according to the horizontal distance matrix, it shows that they're more close to the Italians on their mother's side and Eastern Mediterraneans on their father's side. So they have nothing to do with uh, uh, what you would call Israelites. You see what I'm saying? And so it shows you who you're most closely related to, basically who you pretty much who you are. But like he said, it don't show you a line of descent. So it's two totally different tests for two totally different reasons. It just shows you what cluster you belong to. Yeah, yes, you're a J marker, but you're not the same J marker as the J markers in Arabia. Y'all are not the same. See what I'm saying? So your J would be up here. You would belong. This it's kind of show you where you belong. You know what I'm saying? And what area you know what I'm saying you come from. It don't really show you line of descent.
Exactly, exactly. That's why I keep giving them modern examples. If you had a child in Saudi Arabia, 3 generations from now, he keeps mixing with the local population and that male line still exists, that child's going to be 80 to 90% Saudi Arabian. That's still your child. It's still going to be your grandchildren. It doesn't change that. Like, it's going to be your descendants. So what we doing here?
I'll let you go.
No, you got it, Avery. Go ahead.
Maybe Yo Beta needs to join the room because he's just asking questions, and it'll be better if we could dialogue and try to break it down through both of us talking instead of him typing, and then we have to address each comment at a time. Like, Yo Beta, I think the link is in the chat. Maybe if you want to like talk about this, we can probably like clarify it for you. Why haplogroups is really good science, because our opposition use haplogroups, just as the guy below me said. What's your name?
D Red. That's brother D Red.
Just as D Red said, our opposition, such as Vocab Malone, Faithful to God, and many others, they use haplogroups to try to disprove our Israelite heritage, and they particularly use haplogroup J. We have to also learn this science. Even if we don't like it, we should at least know it. Like, for instance, when it comes to the age of the earth, I particularly support a young earth, but I'm still going to learn about an old earth so I can at least know what I'm talking about and what other people are talking about when it comes to the subject. Same thing with haplogroups. You may not like haplogroups, but you should at least try to understand it and try to know it. So just in case you run into anyone like Vocab Malone or Faithful God or anybody else, you can at least hold your own to a certain extent, because they're not going to use autosomal DNA. I've spoken to various people who don't like autosomal DNA, will only focus on the J marker. So it's good to know a little bit of everything. I think that's life. It's good to know a little bit of everything, just in case you might run into a particular person on a particular subject.
Yeah. Yo, Beta, hit that link, because you also said go do your research. We've already done the research. We share our sources. We read. I buy collegiate books. I pay top dollar for the good education. I don't just go click on Wiki, Google here. No, I buy the good books. So we can have that discussion, like the brother said. Aria Nazi research, haplogroups show patrilineal ancestry. Exactly. So that's what we're trying to look for. Patrilineal ancestry, because if we're claiming to be Israelites, we have to say and prove that we come from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's a male line. How do you determine male ancestry? Through Y chromosome. You don't determine male ancestry through our lineage ancestry through autosomal DNA. No geneticist will say that.
Patrilineal. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. Cut in whenever. Go ahead.
And on top of that, I've even heard some people say haplogroups, Y DNA, mitochondrial DNA, it's fake science. It's not. I mean, it's a sex chromosome for one. Let's break it down to the basics. Haplogroups, Y chromosome and mitochondrial chromosomes. These are sex genes. Men have XY and women have X, if I remember correctly. And this is connected to haplogroups. If you were to say haplogroups are fake, then you're basically saying gender is fake because it's all intertwined in your DNA. So you to a certain extent you have to accept haplogroups unless you think we're all, was it introverts or whatever, intersex?
Yeah.
We're all that.
Yeah, basically you're saying you don't have any parents either. Oh, the Y chromosome don't matter. Your parents don't matter. Your grandparents don't matter. Your great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, they don't matter. You guys have no understanding. Patrilineal ancestry is a key part of identifying related people groups. Yes, because again, like E1b1b and E1b1a, many of these people think they're separate entities on Earth. But no, we go back to EP2, which is our great ancestor that we all descend from. So we're related to E1b1a and E1b1b. But many people in East Africa, like Somalia and Eritrea and Ethiopia, they look at themselves differently because of culture, language, and where they're from and how they look, their morphology, their skull shape, and they look differently and look down on West Africans. But really, we all go back to the same ancestor.
Yep.
And that why DNA shows you that. Autosomal DNA doesn't show you that. Autosomal DNA doesn't go past 300 years. The max range is 500 years. That's just a known genomic fact. So if you were studied, you would know that. You need to use Y chromosomes and X chromosomes to do deep lineage ancestry. Right, Arya. Regardless of phenotype, no matter how a person looks. Here you go. You'll better again. Using haplogroups to prove one's ancestry will not work due to the fact that populations move around constantly. Thus, the reason why multiple different ethnicities can share the same haplogroups. That's our point, because your haplogroup transcends skin color, transcends geographical location, national affiliation, and religious affiliation. It has nothing to do with that. It's just saying that you descend from a common ancestor. Y DNA is a common male ancestor. X DNA will be a common female ancestor. We use the Y DNA because we're trying to ascertain who are the Israelites. And then the Israelites would have to come from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Therefore, they will have a common Y chromosome.
Right.
Low Avenue says, bringing that heat. Yeah, man, we try to bring that heat like our ancestors did, man, with the metallurgy. Joshua Ben John says, I guess we humans lived on the one continent before the flood. After the ark landed on Mount Ararat, people were all over the continent. Climate change can cause people to be separated. I actually agree. I think the green Sahara and the green Arabia were results of a global flood, right? Yes. And I think the global flood actually is the reason why continents begin to spread and split and go apart.
I actually went a little bit into that in my, I think it was my 4th presentation, where I said, I believe, the Garden of Eden was in Israel, but the continent of Eden was Africa and Arabia. And my position is that when it comes to the ark, that actually rested in Mount Judy. I kind of don't support the Ararat theory that it rested in Armenia, the Caucasus. And there's a reason why I don't support that, but I'm not going to get into it right now. But yeah, I definitely believe the whole continent was one. The whole world was one continent. It's called Pangea, I believe, and another one, I think Rhodina. But yeah, I also believe the Ice Age was the after effect of the flood, because when water shoots into the sky, comes back down, and becomes ice, and it says the fountains of the deep broke open. So all this water came back down, froze, and so I don't want to get on a whole tangent, but yeah.
No, that's you're on point with that. And also, if the fountains of the deep, they break up rocks and stuff like that, that will cause hypercooling, because the carbon the rocks will release carbon and or CO2 or whatever, right? And that will cause hypercooling as well. So there's many ways you can spin it. If anyone took a physics class or a geology class, they talk about hypercooling, stuff of that nature. And if you have a a catastrophic event as a global flood, then you would expect that to see the effects of the ice age all over the earth, which that's what the ice age is. It's when the whole earth is pretty much dealing with that. So yeah, great observation on that. And you know what's funny about that, while we're on the topic, then we're going to get back to these comments. Many people say, oh, well, how could you believe that the whole world went through a catastrophe? Wait a minute. You believe in the Chicxulub meteor striking the earth and destroying majority, like 80 to 90% of organisms. That's pretty much in the scientific dogma. So you can believe in that, and it created large land-sized tsunamis, which would have flooded the earth anyway.
Right.
You can believe in that, but you don't want to invoke a global flood. That's just too much for you. Come on, stop it.
And going back to the fountains of the deep breaking open and shooting rock into the sky, I believe that's also where we get, why we find asteroids with water on it. I believe it's because when those chunks of earth and water was shot into the atmosphere, some of it could have, went above the atmosphere and just floated into space. And then because of gravitational pull, some of these rocks are coming back into the earth every now and then when an asteroid hits or whatever. But anyways.
No, very powerful points, man. And if you look at, we discovered iron before we discovered iron. What I mean by that is a lot of the iron of the early iron, you start seeing iron in the Bronze Age actually, but it wasn't from metallurgy. It was from meteors. The meteors would bring iron down. Yeah, they call it meteoritic iron. So that could be also an effect of the flood, like you said, these rocks coming back down.
Definitely no iron in space, so yeah.
Exactly. Joshua Ben John says isolation can create new languages as the continents are separating the people. I agree with you, Joshua Ben John. As you said, some philosophers are not ethnic Hebrews. I agree with you. Some of them have haplogroup A.
By up to like 40%.
This is funny. Jay Keys, he says, create your own videos on your channel instead of trolling Hebrew Israelite brothers sharing knowledge that you never studied. It's called ad hoc, post hoc arguments. They hear something they don't like and they make something up right there on the fly that hasn't been, you didn't study. There was no evidence behind the claims. You just made something up in your head to try to combat what you heard today because you just don't like the outcome. That's all it is. It's not based off academia. It's based off of your personal feelings and emotion.
I think I know who e1b1a might be. You know those videos I sent you, Yeshu, about that guy I debated in the past? I wonder if that's him. I don't know. But I wonder.
Could be. Arya Nasi Research says, haplogroups and migrations also help to corroborate oral histories, mythos, archaeological findings, etc. It's a compilation of all the information that helps point toward a certain conclusion. Exactly. Interdisciplinary studies. That's what we do here on the channel. So we bring up archaeology. Archaeobotanical was brought up today with the bananas, right? And we bring up anthropology, oral history, and we do DNA. So we do all elements to come to our conclusion.
It's thanks to the DNA we were able to find out that Adolf Hitler was a Jew,
Exactly.
Using haplogroups specifically.
Yo Better says a white man can have African Y DNA haplogroup, which in return would not make him mix. The individual autosomal DNA must be taken into account. The man's haplogroup is a tiny fraction of his DNA. No, the person's autosomal DNA is not telling you who they descend from. You get lineage DNA, lineage ancestors from either your Y chromosome, which is your male ancestors, or your X chromosome. Autosomal DNA doesn't tell you that. It's a hodgepodge. So yeah, so you brought up the white man. We brought up in a prior episode that there was a white man with E1b1a, and he heard that he had a black ancestor. His brother did the DNA test. It was E1b1a, and his autosomal ancestor was 97% European and like less than 2% Sub Saharan African. So no, autosomal DNA does not tell you who you directly descend from. It just tells you the
Who you
admixture.
more close. And it close, like, okay, and I keep going back to this. I hate having to repeat myself, but it just show you who you're most closely related to. Like, again, you have J markers that are in Arabia. You have J markers in the Caucasus. You have J markers in Spain, in Portugal. You have J markers in Germany. You have J markers all throughout the Aegean, right? And it just all of J the autosomal DNA shows you is who you're more closely related to. It don't show you who you are. It just says, okay, you're J marker, but you're not related to these people over here. You're related to these people over here. That's all it shows.
Right, through mixing within like
Yeah,
400, 500-year period.
yeah. It just shows you who you more closely related to. It don't determine who you are. Who you are already determined. That's why they're able to take you that route and do an autosomal test because your line of descent has already been determined. They're just trying to figure out who you're more closely related to. Your line of descent meaning you're a J marker, so you would come from either the basal lineage or you would come from the J1 lineage, and they're gonna tell you, okay, you're not related to these over here. You're related to these people over here. You know what I'm saying? So yes, y'all are all J markers, but y'all are not related. That's all.
Yep, but they don't understand that concept. So Joshua says Falasha are simply Hamites who took Hebrew identity after expelling us from the region, just like the Ashkenazi did. I would say not all of them. I wouldn't put all of them as Hamites. Some of them are Hamites. Some of them.
Yeah, the Falasha haplogroup A will be Hamites, but I wouldn't say that they stole Hebrew identity. Israelites had been in contact with Hamites, specifically Cushites, ever since really the Exodus, and we know that the Pharaoh, what's his name? What's his name? Starts with SH. Shahaka. We know that he helped the Israelites during the Babylonian period. Oh, wait, no, the Assyrian period, the 25th dynasty of Egypt that was ruled by Cushites. King Shahakra helped us in a battle against the Assyrians.
You mean Taharka?
Yeah,
Taharka.
Taharka. He helped us in a battle against the Assyrians, and there could have been a lot of proselytizing between the Hebrews and these Cushites, and so that's why I believe Falasha have haplogroup A's, because they could send from the soldiers of Taharka. Or they can go back as far as, the Exodus, when we had a lot of Cushites among Israel too.
Yep. So you can't put all of them. Like I said, you can't put all of them in that box of being Hamites. You can't put all Ashkenazis in the box of being J either, because all of them are not J. All of them are not Japhet.
Yeah, I actually met an Ashkenazi Jew last night who's E1b1a. And he says that his family lineage is from Lithuania and that they're Kohanim. So yeah.
Yep. Family tree DNA actually shows that you had an Ashkenazi Jewish lineage with E1b1a in how you say it, Lithuania.
Lithuania.
I keep butchering it, but you had them there. You had also, they found E1b1a in Austria, so that was in there before the slave trade.
Hungary.
Talk about the slave trade. You said what?
Austria, Hungary, because some people might think you're saying Australia. They might not know about
Hungary. Yeah. Thank you. And these people are probably white European males. But DNA shows you that we share a common ancestor. All right. So says better. I guess he's getting bitter now. He says, so show proof that any of these haplogroups come from living, breathing Israelites. We just did. He just brought up Yeah, E1b1a. If you go to JewishDNA.net, E1b1a is amongst the known Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jewish groups. EP177, EM2 are amongst them. If you go to Family Tree DNA, it talks about E1b1a variants amongst the Sephardi and the Ashkenazi. One is actually found in Greece. So the other one's found in Portugal and connected to Hungary. So we have living, breathing Israelites, people that are socially accepted as Israelites with E1b1a. That's not hard at all. Also, in Donald Yates' book about the Islamic and Jewish influences of America, he talks about several Sephardim having E3A as well, or E1b1a as well. So those are a couple sources that you can check out. Living, breathing Israelites, as you say.
You
Low
could just
avenue.
like push the link and join.
Yeah, I know, right? Yo better LMAO, that's about the only way to trace ancestry and DNA rim through haplogroups. Exactly. That's how you trace. You don't trace ancestry through autosomal DNA, no deep ancestry. Aria Nasi research says a white man having an African Y DNA haplogroup can definitely mean he's mixed. Yes, exactly. That male line would have mixed with white European females or whatever, or what have you, whatever group that he was predominantly surrounded by. Yo Better says I can say R1B is an Israelite group, haplogroup, but what good is that without actual proof?
No, there's a very easy way you can debunk that. I mean, I'm gonna try to be nice, but dude, were you about to say something? Just shoot.
I was just gonna say, if that's the case, do a video on it and show all the proof and evidence for it, like we're doing, you know.
Yeah. But R1B, if you really want to know the origins of R1B, they come from the Yemnaya culture of the Northern Caucasus in the Ukraine, modern day Ukraine, and the Yemnaya culture are the Proto-Indo-Europeans that would have migrated in the early Bronze Age, going into what is today Europe, and conquering the Belpecker people, and also going into like India and conquering the Dravidians and all that, the Aryan migration. R1B is a very known West Eurasian haplogroup, predominantly seen among Indo-European speakers. So it wouldn't be an Israelite haplogroup, because we know Israelites are Semitic people, and Semitic is connected to Afroasiatic. And the origin of Afroasiatic is haplogroup E. And this is why we parse out that haplogroup E will be the lineage of the Israelites, because they are Afroasiatic Semitic people, not Indo-Europeans from the Ukraine who have R.
Excellent breakdown, man. Joshua Ben John, I don't know what you're saying here, but we're going to unpack it. He says, I agree, yo better. White man needs both Y DNA and autosomal DNA to be considered an Israelite. Here's the funny thing about that. Again, autosomal DNA only traces back 200-300 years in most tests. So let's use that same logic, Joshua Ben John. That would mean nobody with E1b1a currently, majority, would be Israelites, because their autosomal DNA doesn't say Levantine, Middle Eastern. It says Western African. Think about what you're saying. Autosomal DNA is not telling you who you descend from. It's not. It's telling you who your ancestors mixed with and where you were within a 300 to 500 year range. Yo Better says, where is the Israelite DNA that was tested for the study? Well, if you go to Priya Marajani, she tested all 8 diverse ethnic Jewish groups and found out that the ancient Israelites would have had the African component within it. And she used the Yoruba, and what was the other tribe? The
Luya Bantu,
right,
who are in Kenya today. Did you get that, or am I on the Matrix?
No, everyone heard you loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, Luya Bantu, Kenya.
All right, let me put the link back in here just in case he's got the testicular fortitude to come here and have a dialogue.
Yes, please.
All right, let's see what else you guys are saying in the comments. What else these guys are saying? Yo, better. You didn't watch the show. You obviously didn't watch it. I provided my sources, but I'm gonna do you a favor. You can either click that link, or your speaking privileges are taken from you. I don't take no sly comments lightly. What's going on, James?
Hey, shalom, Mark. What's good, man? What's good?
Doing the same old, invoking a lot of feelings and emotions when you start breaking down archaeology and DNA and putting it together.
Hey, man, I told you about messing with a religion like that, man. You know, people get sensitive when you mess with their religions, man.
Right.
Because you know this ain't scholarly for them. This then become a religious thing for them. They just running off what they master teacher said 30, 40 years ago with all that antiquated data.
Right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the problem when you're not a free thinker. I just said, James, when you got on here, I was like, man, at one point, it was the only people that was saying this type of stuff was me, you, Jashub, and Divine Prospect. You know what I'm saying? It was only 4 of us saying this, talking about this pre-exilic presence of Israelites in Sub Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's good to.
But now it's becoming more commonplace in our community because I think more and more people are talking about it because people like ourselves starting to highlight it. You know, the evidence is just overwhelming. It's hard to argue against all of these sources. You know what I'm saying? All these archaeological findings, all these genetic findings. It's just becoming too much to argue against.
Especially when you break down this haplogroup J, then it's going to be a game over.
Oh, man. I'm about to say you're going to have some Christians on your neck and some Christian apologists on your neck in a minute talking about, you know what I'm saying, Levantine priests like that. You know what I'm saying? Talking about the tribe of Aaron like that.
It's going to be fun, though. It's going to be fun. I'm going to have to be looking out my window.
Well, you're gonna have vocab. You're gonna have vocab. You're gonna have vocab and faithful to God. You're gonna have them boys sitting outside your house in a minute.
All you gotta do is bring up a
be moving from location to location.
Tap out. I don't deal with that. Yeah. You don't go chapter and verse with vocab. He gonna run out the door because he can have interpretation arguments with you about that verse. He can't do that with science.
Nope. I think vocab is slowly trying to get into DNA, but I think the biggest what are they called? Urban apologists that's sort of dealing with DNA is faithful to God so far. LaRon tried to deal with DNA with me, but all he did was holler and yell and try to curse me out. But and I think he was there that day. Yeah, I think you were there. Yeah. You.
It was like the first time me and you was on a panel together in the clubhouse. Yeah.
Remember when he tried to say the Persians were Semitic? I'm like, bro, that's an Indo-European language. What are you talking about?
Yeah. He tried to say the Medes weren't in ancient Iran. You know what I'm saying? He tried to lie. That dude.
Yeah, because he don't even understand that Persians don't speak Arabic, even though some of them speak Arabic today. They speak Farsi. And like you said, Farsi is a fucking Indo-European language. It's not no damn fucking.
And who was in Iran? Japhet. They died. So it's like, come on, man. Don't lie. Yep. I mean, you that's a sin. Don't lie.
No, you know what it is. He don't understand.
Go ahead, Jashub.
No, he don't understand population replacement and stuff like that because he trying to base it off of Elon. He trying to say Elon was there.
But Elon was in the southeast, while Madai was in the northwest.
Right. And that's where a lot of J was. J was in the northwest of Iran, close to the Caucasus.
Exactly.
Because that's where J originated from.
Exactly.
Georgia.
But they're gonna say what they're gonna say is Basil J don't originate in the Caucasus. J1 originate in the Caucasus.
Well,
if they were smart.
I say, yeah, they can argue that, but then you'll go back to IJ, you know what I mean? And that's still up in Europe.
Yep.
Ain't down in the Middle East.
I is exclusively in.
There's nowhere around. Yeah.
Siberia, not Siberia, but
Europe.
Europe, Scandinavian Germans, Germanic people.
In Scandinavia, and then like when you get towards the Chalcolithic, I think you have some in Italy, and then you have Cheddaman, who's
Sardinia
in Britain. So I mean, like you got to deal with that.
Yeah, I guess Scandinavians are Semites though.
Back to Sardinia, and he a I.
Wait, who's an I?
Kevin G.
Kevin G. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, he's an I. Just like
Just like who?
Nas. At least that's what Yeshua told me. Am I right, Yeshua, or did I misquote?
Yeah, I mean, D-Red was here when we heard it. Yeah, it's I. He haplogroup I.
I or R? I thought he was haplogroup R.
No, he I. He's Scandinavian. He haplogroup I. Like, I mean, I think Henry Louis Gates revealed that or something like that. Yeah, he I. Oh, that pro-African stuff he be rapping about, he gonna have to change his tune, bro.
That boy gonna have to be shouting out motherfucking Ragnar.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the law books and shit.
Stonehenge.
Yeah. Eric the Red. Motherfucker got himself Eric the Red. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man.
The Nordic.
Yeah. Ivan, what is it? Ivar the Boneless?
The boneless.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nas is a great example of why autosomal DNA does not determine who you are. Because autosomal, he's probably 80 to 70% Sub-Saharan African. But his wife,
he probably autosomally, he probably more closely related to Sub-Saharan Africans, but his line of descent is still I. So, but yeah, they don't, the shoot, no, they don't know nothing about that type of stuff. You're talking way over their head.
Yeah, man, we really trying to take these people to a collegiate level, and they stuck on, they playing church, bro. I don't know how else to say it.
Read.
Yeah, that's what it is. They want me to go through Deuteronomy 28. Then they heard it a million times, but they want me to break that down. Hey, listen, man, it's the wrong channel, bro. I don't do that. Yeah, I don't do that, man.
Yeah, even though I personally support Deuteronomy 28, I wouldn't use it in an argument unless somebody actually believes in the Bible like that. And I don't think most of these Christians actually believe in it because they throw out 50, 70% of it.
Is this brother being funny, or he telling
the truth? And I think I subscribe to it too, James. But like you said, I wouldn't use that in the argument. Because why? Because so you can try to say that the Jews got taken to Egypt, the Jews got taken to Italy by boat. Yeah. But the problem is you don't read the corresponding passages to where it says that a language who their fathers have not known. You see what I'm saying? You forget. They conveniently leave out that part, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I mean, they conveniently leave out that part. I mean, the people.
But I was saying, and plus you got like the DNA evidence, the history, the archaeology, like we've been showing on
your mic's real low, James.
Far more concrete and solid argument. Hey, what you had said?
And that's true though. Like you can use all of that. Like if you use all of that, you have a well-rounded argument, and you actually have a working model to describe your perspective, as opposed to just saying this is it and that's that. You know what I'm saying? Okay, instead of using that as your sole argument. You see what I'm saying? Like a lot of them do use that as their sole argument, and that's not gonna fly. And uh, you're not gonna be able to use that in no sole argument with no damn body.
Yeah, not no interpretation battle. Yeah, not where they gonna accept what they want to accept and throw out what they want to accept due to their religious ideology or whatever. No, you come with something that's concrete. You can't throw out my Y chromosome. You can't throw out, you know what I'm saying, the chicken. You can't throw out the watermelon. You can't throw out the cattle. You can't, you know what I'm saying, throw out the iron metallurgy. You can't throw out, you know what I mean, agriculture all of a sudden popping up. You can't throw out population inflation. You can't throw out all this stuff just because you don't like it. When the scholars are agreeing with it.
yeah. Yeah. That's what it boils down to. You don't like what you hear, so you just throw it out. So if you throw the Y chromosome away, you throw away all your male ancestors. That's exactly what you just did. You know, so like this is pseudoscience.
Afrocentricity they've been talking about, they threw all that out.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Your
threw
Y
the sneaky
chromosome.
people away.
West Africa patrilineal last time I checked.
Yeah, you threw the sneaky away. You threw the ancient Wagadu away, the Mundi people away. you didn't throw away all of the Coast of Guinea.
You know what I'm saying? But they don't think about that. They don't want to be nothing connected to anything they think may be the Bible, anything that has to do with the Near East. They don't care if the E marker was all over the Near East. They saying the hell with the E marker. They want to be A and B. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Yep. At this particular point, man, that's what's going on. Dudes are just salty. Hey man, Garth Yahuda, bro, show me the Jerry Seinfeld is e1b1a paper, man, or wherever you get the article you got that from. Because I can't find it. I've been looking for it.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Isn't he that guy from that old sitcom?
Yeah. Yep. Look what he
like
says.
a
Nas,
Jew,
look,
I
this is the
think.
confusion. This is the confusion. Nas is clearly more related to us than a white person who has E1B1A marker. Based on what? Because the way he looks? DNA doesn't care about how you look. You understand? Yeah, his mother might be an African descendant, but his father isn't. You understand? Yeah, you guys are too visual, man. That's why I call you brothers. You brothers are not dealing with information on a scientific level. You brothers really are like, surface level researchers. Picture page scholars, man. That's what you are. You know what I'm saying? So, y'all got to do better, man.
Picture pages, time to get your picture pages, time to get your crayons and your pencils. Picture pages, open up your picture pages, time to watch Bill Cosby do a picture page with you.
That's for that brother right there that said Nas is clearly more related to us than a white person who has E1B1A marker. No, the person with the E1B1A marker will be more related to us because we share a paternal ancestry. You understand? In the article I read to you guys last time, it was like in the 1700s when that happened. Like his ancestor was a man that was a free black during that time that married a white woman, I think the article said, and they continue to marry white women until the present day. Now they don't look like you, but they still related to you. What the hell wrong with you, man? Oh, you said you were joking. My bad, man. My bad, bro. What Yeah, man. What y'all think about the presentation? How much did y'all see? Did y'all see the information about the horse tooth and the connection I was drawing with the Oshu civilization already having horse breeding with the Noaks?
You know what, brother? I
Yeah,
ain't
that
even
was
gonna lie. I
powerful,
ain't even
bro.
catch all
That,
that.
that information was powerful because we don't hear that. We don't hear that at all. I can't even say we don't hear enough about it, right? We don't hear that aspect because again, we have individuals out here that have set agendas that's not about connecting the dots, right? They're about leaving gaps to where you can make up your own shit, right? And that's the part that really kills me and burns me up because, like you just brought out, you know what I'm saying? And I'm excited the fact that you read more than the average, right? You don't mind grabbing sources and pulling out things that's uncomfortable for people, including us as Israel. You know what I'm saying? And that Danite information, bro. I've been on Danite. I've been on him for a good 3-4 years. And when I tell you, man, that's how I understand about Oxum. That's how I understand about the capital of Oxum, which is start with an M. I can't think of it right now, but all of that gives me an understanding of how our migration pattern through Egypt into what we call East Africa, even into the northern part of Africa, right? Like all of that lines up with your information that you was bringing out today. And Dan and that Ogden, he brings out so much information, fam. Like if y'all can get access to the information that he actually puts out for us about our migration pattern, you know what I mean? Like it'll open up so much understanding for you on why we are so thick and so deep in what we call Africa today.
Yeah, man. Yeah, bro. Like, yeah, like we went in, like I said in the presentation 3,000 years ago, and we had farming, so we just started, multiplying like rabbits and taking over. And like that then I said, we were warring with the native tribes. We were taking them out. And it really was like we had the conquest of Canaan, we had the conquest of Africa. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, when you look in the book of Jubilees, if I know, Jubilees is it? No, I think it's Jashir. When you look in the book of Jashir, you'll see where the land was divvied out to the three sons, Japhet, Cam, and Shem. When you find out the land that was actually given to Shem, and you do the actual work and see the land for yourself with your own eyes, with the maps that we have access to, you'll find out that northern Africa,
Fact.
I'm gonna say from like Ethiopia all the way across, straight across, was the land that was given to Shem. Not the southern part of Africa, but we talking about the northern to southern, central, all the way to West Africa, all the way to where the sun sets, even to this land that we call America today. You know what I'm saying? Bro, that information is there for us to understand. If, you know what I'm saying, we got brothers that don't mind tapping into that type of information for the most part, because they don't know the authors as their excuse is.
And the genetics will support that too, because the earliest place you see these markers in Africa is in North Africa, like Northwest Africa, and then you find like we was talking about the other day, Ramses III father was supposed to be a Libyan mercenary, and in Libya, if it was an e1b1a in Libya, it's in North Africa. So ancient Shemites, or ancient Near Eastern people, whatever you want to call it, been going through the region of North Africa, following the monks since the most ancient of times.
Right. That's big facts, man. That's big facts. And they just gonna have to, bow down to haplogroup E, man. That's what we going at with this, man. Listen, we came in through the north and then penetrated the Sahara and took over Sub-Saharan Africa. That's what happened.
Let me ask you this, Joshua. Have you checked, right? How how the prophecies say that we'd be scattered to the four corners. How much have you checked about the migration of where E1B1 is today in the world? Like, have you done that yet?
Not extensively, but we're
Earlier,
pretty.
I actually mentioned.
Oh, go ahead, Avery. Go ahead.
Earlier, I actually did mention e1b1a being found in a descendant of a Lithuanian Jew. He says he's from the tribe of Levi, but he's a white Ashkenazi Jew, and he has e1b1a, and he says his ancestors come from Lithuania. They're from Lithuania, escaping the Holocaust, went to America, but before Lithuania, they came from Israel. And so, I guess I assume some of our brothers, or e1b1a brothers, that didn't go into Africa just stayed around the Mediterranean and would have gone into Europe like other e1b1b lineages did.
Yeah, those would be
So that's just
considered.
one.
Those would be considered our Gentile family that Paul was talking about. That was
The
up
ones
in the
that
north.
were like, you talking about the ones that weren't Israelite by faith, but they were like Goyim by culture.
Yes, that's exactly how I understand it, Yashar.
Exactly.
That's exactly how I read it.
Yep.
That's exactly what you just said, bro.
Hellenistic, basically.
I mean, when you being honest with the information, Joshua, bro, you can't dismiss that, bro. It's only when you trying to hide and cover up things that you just don't want to accept is when, you know what I'm saying, we start hearing all of these crazy ass doctrines and weird shit. Excuse my language, bro.
And that's why they don't like coming on channels like this, having discussions like this, because you just can't make up shit over here. You know what I'm saying? You got to source up a shut up over here. You got to bring something to prove what you're saying, because they love to have those conversations where they speak in hypotheticals of what could be going on or what they think might have happened. But once you start getting hard data and start asking them questions about that hard data, they get real quiet or something because they making all that shit up.
Or they start to curse you out and yell.
Try to make the conversation go left, just start subliminals at you to try to make you mad.
That's that conscious community deflection. You know what I mean? Like they're known for that. Like for real.
Yeah, on Romans 9, where it talks about the Israelites that weren't Israelites. Yeah, that's on point, man, when we're talking about DNA, because people that we don't associate as who we are based off phenotype and how they look are actually our relatives. So yeah, the same thing Paul was going through. That's why they brought up don't argue endless genealogies, because many of these people couldn't tie themselves back with each other. But now that we got DNA, we actually can. So that was a powerful point about Paul and the ninth chapter of Romans, where he talks about these Hellenistic, like the brother Avery said, Jews or Israelites.
Yeah, and you can find that. My bad, Avery. You can find that.
No, you're good.
You can take it even back to I think it's was it Lud that was a child of Shem, or Lid or something like that.
Yeah, Lud.
Well, Lud.
Now, when you understand where Lud, right, where he populated at, he populated in the heart of Europe, bro, like right there by Russia, right? So we talking about Shemitic blood there, right? We don't never mention that. We don't never talk about that, right? And so when you look into that, you know what I'm saying? Here come the E1B1. I think you said, what is it? E1B1 something?
Yeah, E1B1A, E1B1B, and you do have E1B1, which is the father of both of them.
So that E1B1B, I would honestly say, bro, you know what I'm saying, just from the evidence and everything that's being presented, is that it comes from Europe, yo. That's where we populated the most. You know what I'm saying? Then when you got E1B1A, it's in Africa, Mediterranean, excuse me. That's what I see when I look at the DNA Sure.
Talking about today?
That's why I always say haplogroup E is
Yep.
the founder of Mediterranean civilization. It's seen in it's seen in the Amazigh, North Africans. It's seen in the Ethio-Semitic civilizations of Aksum. It's seen in the Egyptians. It's seen in the Greeks. It's a Mediterranean dominated haplogroup.
Yep, during the Peloponnese period.
Wait, what'd you say, James? I didn't quite hear you.
Oh, I was saying during around that Peloponnese period, they find a lot of sub-Saharan Africans that mixed into Greeks. I think they related it more closely to e1b1a2, which is East Sub-Saharan African.
Yeah, he's talking about the Peloponnese period, Ivory. Could you hear him, Ivory? Yeah, James, your microphone is low.
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit, but yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a bit. That's better.
Oh.
You might have to just talk louder. I don't know.
All right, cool. I was just saying that it was during the Peloponnesian period in Greece that you find the sub-Saharan African DNA mixed into there, and it's more closely related to East Sub-Saharan Africans, like Ethiopians.
Yeah, I think I remember reading a study about that. There was a few studies that found that Greeks had both West African and East African blood in them. Macedonians, I think, and Albanian Greeks and stuff like that.
I mean, that's just a like those are okay, so the language Greek, right? It was brought forth by our priest, right? Now, when they talk about these people being connected to the language, you know what I'm saying? It's just it's like Asians that come to America, they speak English. Africans, they speak English. You know what I'm saying? But they still who they are, right? So when we talk about that language, we tend to do what the Europeans, or excuse me, Europeans, what the heathens do, and that's identify people by language. When that's ignorant, bro. When you do the due diligence of how to identify people, yeah, you can go by language in a sense, but you can't identify nations by that, because all nations can speak different languages. Like, they have their own language, but then they can speak 5-6 other different languages, be able to communicate with other people that they trade with. So
but when you're conquering a people, you kind of find whatever way you can to kind of, just lump them in a group to describe them, just so you can, write a record of them and stuff. It ain't really to be too specific, but you is right in what you're saying, though. When you want to dig into these ancient cultures, you got to dig a little bit deeper, because the ruling culture may just lump them into a group by any means. It could be by, okay, we just got them all from this region. Oh, they all speak a language that sounds similar to us. It could be any reason they do it.
Absolutely. And here's a great example of what I'm talking about today, in today's time, the Olympics, right? America, we have different nationalities to represent USA. You have Asians, you have even Africans, right? That's representing USA. But nationally wise, DNA wise, none of us is that, right? But this is what they have us tagged under, and this is what people identify us as. You know what I'm saying? Oh, he's an Asian American. He's just not an American, but he's an Asian American. He's an African American. He's just not an American. And then they even come to the point to even say, well, some brothers like to say, oh, we Black Americans. Like, yo, come on, man. I say this for me to have understanding about conversations like this, because for a lot of our brothers, it's really over their head. I simply say this. When I look to identify us as a people according to how our ancestors identified us, right? They identified us by tribe and by name. So I seek for that. I don't seek for the popular title that the world accepts, if you guys understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's called in-depth research.
Yeah,
People
because
like surface level.
hey James, your mic's still low, bro. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
There you go. What
Yeah,
was
that's
the
it.
difference? How'd you get louder?
Because man, I got like this headset that hangs from my head, so when it's away from my mouth, that's when y'all be saying like I be talking low because I be busy doing other stuff.
Oh, okay. But to touch on Yashar's point, yeah, that our modern identities do shroud our real identity, right? Because people will say, "Well, how can you be an Israelite when you a Black American male?" I've been hearing that a lot on the Clubhouse app. So they'll use modern identity to say that we can't be these ancient people that we connecting ourselves to, right? And that's why it's important that, like you said, do the due diligence to break down the history and the migratory patterns to connect ourselves to these ancient people. Because in today's time, they only see us as Black. They only see us as Black American or African. They don't see us as anything else, you know. So that's the
Absolutely,
whole
absolutely. And like what you're doing, and a few other brothers, you know what I'm saying, that I've come across in my years of studying our heritage and history. If we don't present the information, they stay on the shelves. They continue to collect dust. Because if you depend on your so-called leaders to do it, then that's where you mess up, because they're not going to do it. They have every opportunity. They have the biggest platforms to be able to reach a grand number of people, but they choose to not share the truth of our history and of our background. So when you got people like that, then you have to say, well, okay, we have to have somebody else that's doing the work to, to show forth and bring forth the light that's not being brought forth. And this is where it's at. It's not a big platform, nah. But in the same breath, the information that we bringing forth, that you should bring forth on a regular basis, is you won't even get it really for real in your higher education, your higher institutions like colleges. Why? Because they have a set agenda to keep certain information not put forth, to keep it basically hid. You know what I'm saying? And if we are not doing the work, our future, our children, they're gonna continue to be programmed. We have the opportunity now to stop the programming by presenting the information, by reading, putting it out there. Right now, it's a time of what? Social media, phones, electronics, all this stuff. So yeah, they got access to be able to hear what we're talking about, even if it's for 5 minutes. In that 5 minutes, I guarantee you, they can get more information and be able to go take that information and go dig and find other things that we're not even talking about at this point. So yeah, man, we got to do way better than what we've been doing as a whole, not just a couple of people. Yeshua, a couple of other brothers that from the Northern Tribe that put out a lot of information from the history from America, but we got to do it on a more grander scale. Don't be scared to read no sources, man. If you can't read, get somebody to read it for you. And if you can break it down, break the information down, that's cool. But we need it out here. This ain't just for show. This ain't just for likes. This ain't just to, you know what I'm saying, get you a all fans page. Nah. It's about tearing down strongholds, man. Tearing down lies that has put us in a situation to where, you know what I'm saying, we're looked down on as a nation. The bottom. So yeah, man, we got to continue to do this work, man.
Big facts. Hey, Yeshua, do me a favor, man, because I missed it. Could you go over a little bit of information on that horse too for me?
Yeah, so I had purchased a book called The History of Horse Breeding in West Africa. And in that book, it talks about the oldest evidence for horses in West Africa actually go around about 3,000 years ago, first millennium BC. So they found a horse tooth in West Africa in a plateau. So I connected that information with the Note information, which I know you're already aware of because you did a video a couple years ago about the Notes.
Yeah.
And they're clay figurines depicting them riding horses. They call it the equestrian pair. Then I connected that information with our DNA being found in the Oshu civilization or the BMAC civilization, which is in Asia by Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan.
Yeah.
This culture was already accustomed to metallurgy and horse breeding. So I use those points of references to make the argument that we had groups of people that were involved in this Iranian farming group as well, bringing down the understanding of horse breeding and bringing down horses, and farming, which we all know, and metallurgy, and harmonized all of those elements to show that we already were aware of these things and brought it into Sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, and Israel is some of the earliest places you'll find equestrian statues in the first place, for like riders on horses. You know what I'm saying? And then you find that boom in the Note culture. It's full of them. You know what I'm saying? The ones in Israel look a bit primitive, but the ones in Note, they look advanced, like they had been spent a few more centuries working on and perfecting it. You know what I mean? But it's clear that Note culture had connections with North Africa, and we already know who colonized most of North Africa. The Jews colonized most of North Africa. That's just a fact. Everybody know that.
Carthage, the Phoenicians, and Israelites. Yep.
Morocco, they got. I think they got some evidence of them there. I think 800 BCE.
Yep.
And I mean, anywhere you find Phoenicians, pretty much, because it proved from the Lachish cranials that the Phoenicians were two peoples. Because 50% of them had the Wormian bones, just like the Lachish cranials did, and 50% didn't. So I mean, that shows that they were Israelites and Canaanites, or at least the Neolithic Iranians that moved into that region and had took over by then that point. And they was going and populating everywhere. That's why you find a lot of J markers in these regions. You find a lot of e1b1b in these regions. You know already about the connection of E and J, because I know you read that paper on that, about how they pretty much been running together since the Neolithic.
Right. Even on the coins, I'll make this quick point, but even on the coins, Phoenician coins, they show two different types of people. They show what looks to be a Caucasian, and then what looks to be a quote unquote Sub-Saharan African. I don't know if y'all seen those coins, but they're Phoenician coins that show two different races when it comes to the Phoenicians. Like there are two types of people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the cranial records show and prove that to be true.
Yep.
Because the
Multi-ethnic
was Sub-Saharan African.
They mix with everything and everybody. They were like, for real, like, when I say a real, what you would call mixed people, because they men didn't have, a structure in the sense of who to really marry and who not to. They didn't give a damn. They dealt with men and women, to be honest. So when you understand that they characteristics, then yeah, man, like to see different nationalities on their coins, it makes sense. It go hand in hand with their character and how they carry themselves and how they conduct themselves amongst each other in other nations. Like according to us and like how we move, we had structure in the sense that we were directed not to do certain things with certain groups of people, right? Not every nation on the planet, but certain groups of people. So they didn't have that, So yeah, man. I'd like to say that those pale skins that are so-called Canaanites, I don't think that they are blood Canaanites, to be honest. I just think that they were labeled that because they were in that particular part of the land.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Yashar. You're exactly right, because they found Ibri was talking about this I think a week or 2 weeks ago. with LaRon. They found the names of the people were actually what they call Hurrian, and Hurrian is
Yep.
like northern. Is it the northern Turkey or
Southern
Syria?
Caucasus,
Yeah,
the south of the Caucasus.
right.
And they had Iranian Chalcolithic DNA. They're Iranians, really. They're Iranians and Caucasians.
Right. So they just lived in the land, probably adopted the culture of the Canaanites, and was buried like a Canaanite. Doesn't mean they are the sons of Ham. See, people conflate those two. You know, so you are correct. Those people were not the sons of Ham. These people were just migrants that moved into the area, and that's been a theme in a lot of our presentations. We don't belong to Sub-Saharan Africa. We migrated there and dominated. You know, so yeah, excellent observation, Yashar. But I also wanted to, real quick, because he brought up the horse thing. In this book here, it even says the Encyclopedia of the Ancient World by Shonen Grimley that sometime in the first millennium BC, traders probably started to cross the Sahara Desert using horse-drawn chariots. You know, so that's what's stated in this book, and it's very possible because, again, the Note culture knew about horses, and we know the Note culture was in Nigeria, right? So about 2,500 years ago, peoples from northern Africa started moving into southern Africa, bringing a new way of life with them. These tribes lived in settled villages, grew crops like sorghum and millet, beans and cowpeas, and herded cattle, sheep, and goats. They also knew how to use iron, and each group made pottery with its own distinctive style. This was the beginning of the African Iron Age. Iron was the first metal used by Africans living south of the Sahara Desert, and it was spread through Africa by farmers. So again, it goes back to that harmonizing I was talking about. What group of people had farming, iron metallurgy, and horse breeding, and had e1b1a amongst them? The BMAC culture in South Asia, they had all those things. So that's how I make that connection.
Not to cut your build, Yashu, but those are the same. When I hear what you're saying about the farming, the tools that we needed, we didn't use wood tools, okay, to do any farming. So we needed, what did he say? We had the sickle. Did we have the sickle? And we had a few other different tools that we use that we can also use for war, right? And this is in the scriptures, right? So who taught that? How did we even learn that? You see what I'm saying? Who gave us that information to be able to conduct ourselves and be able to do those things here on the earth? You know what I'm saying? And then when I look at the chariots, right? It take me back to Asher, take me back to the Assyrians. You know what I'm saying? In the connection that they had with Egypt, right? And so again, it's still with those chariots, they wasn't all wood. You needed metal to make those chariots be solid, because when you if it ain't no smooth surface for those chariots to rock on, enough bumping and as fast as those horses was pulling those chariots, come on, man, they'll break apart, they'll tear up. Especially when they have to make a specific type of turn, right? If it ain't nothing to keep those things in place, those wheels in place, listen, man, it ain't gonna work the way you think it's gonna work. If it was that simple, right, for chariots to be moving off of strictly wood tools, wood screws and things that we need, right? Don't you think that instead of us actually having these metal and fiberglass cars, don't you think we would just make it cheaper for us to just make wood things to travel in, like box cars and shit, like they used to do back in the day? But even with those box cars, they still have to use metal screws, metal things to keep everything moving and rotating the way it should rotate.
It's more durable. It's stronger than
Come
like
on, man.
wood and stuff. Yeah.
So man, bro, like where do they get it from, fam? Like if we're bringing this into Africa, that means that they didn't have this knowledge and this understanding before we got there.
Exactly.
No, man. It dropped from the sky, don't you know?
All right, man. You guys we're gonna get ready to wrap it up here. Y'all want any final statements before we leave? Before we close out?
Powerful presentation, really good information, and everything had sources, so no one can really disprove you. You had sources, and everything was well put together.
Yeah, for those that came in late, just press rewind, and just like the brother Erie just said, you'll be able to tap into those sources that the brother used to support his presentation. And with that being said, man, tanks on the ground, source up or shut up. This is the Source Debate League, family.
All right, we're gonna close out. I say Shabbat Shalom to everybody. I'm representing the Lone Star today, so y'all gonna have to hear some Lone Star Texas music on the way out this joint. I appreciate everybody. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the video on the various social media platforms. Let's get this information out there, all right? All right, shalom.
This for them Fords, Oldsmobiles, Buicks, and them Chevys, Cadillacs, 24 inches high sliding on Pirellis. Candy coated gloss airbags, lower scrape the belly. Beat in the truck, turning buildings into confetti. Country grammar like Nelly, we speak with a drawl, but slow or something like in our slabs, we creep and we crawl. Hit a button, you know the roof and screens fall. Jamming screwed up Tila, though we ain't too tired to ball. Root beer candy coated, Caprice flipping like I'm the law. See that shirt on that bop, got enough knock to pop it off. Old head cats telling me, Charlie, you need to knock it off. I just did look again, see I'm about to pop the bra. I'm from the dirty third coast where we keeping it raw. Your slabs up against ours, you think that you're beating us now. Re-pimp your rocker slabs down in the south, be nasty, y'all. Think that it's something, just wait till we pull out them classic calls. Candy paint drip like it was fresh out of molasses jars. Futuristic, got customization is way past the stars.
I got my mind on form, but I'm swinging bumper grill. Got my mind on form, but I'm swinging bumper grill. I'm swinging them bumper grill. I'm swinging them bumper grill. I'm swinging them bumper grill. Them bumper grill. I got my mind on form, but I'm swinging bumper grill. Got my mind on form, but I'm swinging bumper grill. I'm swinging them bumper grill. I'm swinging them bumper grill. I'm swinging them bumper grill. Them bumper grill.
Ain't no need to asking, boy, yes, I'm a winner, bearing on 24 with VVS and a spinner, leather seats and my name and diamonds pressed in the center. The only time this whip kick a rest is in the winter. Never a beginner, I'm an iced out champ. Leave the bracelet on my wrist and catch an iced out crab. I'm a dog and my whoopers barking nothing but free on, cause it's powered by an iced out amp. Hold up, Rappy Rick. I'ma slow it down and bring it back for my boy Brandon Chisholm in Tyler, Texas. Remember the first CD I ever got on? Ain't no hoes barred, baby. Ain't no need of asking, boy. Yes, I'm a winner. Bourbon on 24s with VVS and the spinner, leather seats, and my name and diamonds rest in the center. And the only time this whip get caressed is in the winter. Never a beginner, I'm a iced out champ. Lift the bracelet on my wrist and get your iced out cramp. I'm a dog and my woofers barking nothing but free on, cause it's powered by an iced out amp. Platinum princess cuts or invisible sex, going up against us is like you're making it visible. Bet you can't see us. Envious niggas wanting to be us. Untamed already out for the chain. You can't free us from the side. Platinum metal, VVS, diamonds in my swinging around in my slab, showing boys what we buy. They hustle, me making my pay. From no ice to iced up, broke eyes to priced up. Me slanging CDs in the hood like me or selling white stuff. Multi-million-dollar enterprise, keeping the white cup in the palm of me force. And a pound to grow that light up. Clean from head to toe, shine from my ear to my grill. Got pneumonia and got my day and keeping my chest on chill. Sell the comfort, come down and see this how we live. Diamonds in our mouth, know what I'm talking about. The price. Man, rapid week, they keep having to call out the mixtape mechanic. Man, no.
That's why they call me versatile child. I try to give you a little bit of everything.
Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. 7 candlesticks up, and I've been telling y'all it ain't a debate. It's a stick up. Gang!